Okay, so let's kind of pull ourselves together and welcome back, Jack. Yes, there is. But we didn't see the eclipse last night. It was too cold to go out and see it. I don't know.
Right, driving now.
Okay, well, everything is white out there, including the snow. There you go. Nice and bright. Okay, 2BA in Canada. I don't know. I know I put out bread on Friday for the birds.
Shabbat
It's still there. I was actually very careful to make sure I would hang it where the squirrels wouldn't get to it. Well, the squirrels are sleeping and the birds are sleeping, so we're all safe.
My birds came to the seats today, so
well, that's good, and they're still there. All right, anyways. So let me tell you where we are, because we're actually in the middle of something, but we're starting something new in the middle of something. We had a whole discussion last time. We're actually going to start on halacha-theory, but we had a discussion last time about whether the or of behema tmeya would become tamei, where the skin. We got into a discussion about the mishkan, the different layers on the mishkan, one of which was made of pishtan. We got to talk about pishtan, and we got to talk about on top of that was a layer of or, was a layer of wool. And then there was a layer of or tchashim and rams, correct? And we gave out a handout of the 3 layers, which they all call them badgers, because that must be how the King James Version reversed them. But they were good pictures. But then we had a whole discussion last time, and we actually came up with the opinion that said that or behema tmeya was a question Rabbi Eliezer had asked: is the or behema tmeya, is it tamei or not? And the Gemara said really the question had to deal with whether the question really related to whether the tachash was a kosher animal or not kosher animal. Because we know that the only items that you can use in the Beis Hamikdash would be items that were kosher. So if the tachash would be a kosher animal, that would be an indication that it could be only or behema tahora. If the tachash were a non-kosher animal, so it would be an indication that it could even be or behema tmeya.
We don't know what a tachash is, right?
That's correct. We're in the middle of discussing that, so we didn't come to a conclusion about that. But in other words, the discussion about whether or behema tmeya or behema tamei would be considered tamei for tumas ohel, whether if you used it in roof material, it would make it a tamei, was related to that tachash. And the Gemara said, Rav Yosef responded and said, how could you have any kind of question about what we use in the Mishkan? Because it says, Lo hukshu l'mlecha shemaim ela or behema Torah. The only thing that they used in the Mishkan was the skin of behema Torah, was the only thing. I'll read again. Right. Lo hukshu l'mlecha shemaim. It doesn't say Mishkan, by the way. So it was only used for melecha shemaim, for holy work, or behema Torah bavad. So that seemed to prove that, therefore, that this was only or behema tahora in the Mishkan, and the Gemara had a discussion to prove from it that therefore this was that the only type of or that could become tamei was or behema tahora, not or behema tmeya. And then the Gemara, and that's how we pretty much left it. And then the last thing we did, we had some kind of kal v'chomer that seemed to say that no, it is possible to understand that even or behema tmeya is going to be matama ba'ohel, and that's really where we had. If you just want to look on Chavchet Amud Bet, we're not going to go through the whole Gemara, but this is the last thing we did. The last opinion was Rava Mebarnish, who said that we have a Kal Machomer from Notzei Eitzim, Shein Matame B'Nagayim, Matame B'Ol Mohed. I don't know exactly how we know this, but you have a beged that's made of notes of I guess fine plucked hair of Izim. It's not metame b'nagayim, but it is metame tumas ohel hameis, tumas ohel. So or behema tmeya shemetamis b'nagayim, and then shemetame b'ol hameis. So surely then or behema tmeya, which is metame with nagayim is taras, will surely be metame with ohel hameis. Will be the tumah of ohel hameis will be applicable to the nagayim of behema tmeya. So which means, and we're going to go back all the details now, that if that's true, then we don't really have it. So the Gemara is going to say, so what, the proof that it was an or behema tahora, that or behema tmeya can't become a tamei, had to do with this pasuk, this drasha, that lahuchshu l'mlecha shmaim el or behema tahora. So if that's the case, it's possible therefore that the tachash was a non-kosher animal, right? And it would be mitame tumas ohel, because non-kosher or could be mitame tumas ohel if it's not in the Mishkan. So the Gemara wants to know now, here's the discussion. We're going to leave the Tumah part on the side for a moment. The Gemara says, what are we going to do with this drasha that we had, that lo hukshu l'melecha shemayim ela or behema tahora? The only thing you can use for melecha shemayim is going to be or behema tahora. If you're going to say the tachash was a non-kosher animal, and you use it to cover the Mishkan, so what is melecha shemayim? Now keep in mind, it doesn't say melecha beis hamikdash, and melecha Mishkan. It says some holy work. If you're using some kind of skin material, some kind of natural skin material for a mitzvah, or it doesn't say mitzvah, actually says for holy work, melecha shemayim, it has to be from a behema tahora. So what is that referring to? Because you can't refer to the Mishkan as we thought it would refer to. So the Gemara says as follows. We're going to pick up on the fifth line. So, the fourth line. Elohad Tani Rav Yosef, lo hukshu b'melecha shemayim al or behema tahora b'vad. When it says that the only thing you can use for melecha shemayim is skin of a kosher animal, so what does that apply to? It can't apply to the Mishkan because the tachash was a non-kosher animal. So the Gemara says, with tefillin, so it applies to tefillin. That tefillin is made of different parts, different components, all of which are really coming from skins in different ways. You have ritzuos, you have the batim, right? You have the parchments, right? They're coming from a different part of the skin. The gidim that tie up the thing. It's not really or, but it actually is together. That's also a kosher animal.
Is the batim also made from
yes.
board?
Yes, and yes.
Looks like it's plastic.
No. It's hard. It's made in a mold. It's made in a mold, and it's like could be sanded down or something. It's made in a mold.
When they say sanded,
they stretch it into a mold, right? They stretch the rosh. They stretch the
We're talking about the batim.
The batim, both the yad, which is a square, right, and also the rosh, which is four components, is stretched into a mold, and it's pushed and stretched and hard.
Not to get the sheen also,
right? And then the shin can be used. They sometimes use a pliers. There's molded in, but to make it very fine, they use a pliers to tweak it out. Okay, so it's actually comes off.
You've seen them make it? You've seen them in the factory?
I've seen the molds. I have seen where it's in process. Yes. I haven't watched the whole process piece to piece.
You've seen the mold.
So they actually put in some sort of skin or something of a.
Yeah, it's a skin. Think of a leather coat. Or it's processing skin.
But it's hard. That's hard.
It's not hardened yet. It's being processed. That's actually the processing of the skin. It's semi-hard. Okay. Now you have to remember the beauty or the uniqueness of leather is leather shapes itself. Why is footwear made of leather? Why is the best footwear made still of leather? Because it molds itself to your foot. Now we have synthetics, but they're not the same. But that's why footwear has been made of leather, because it molds itself to your foot, not just sandals but shoes. Okay, and the same thing will happen if you wear a leather coat. It's a natural material. It molded itself into the skin of the animal, Okay, so I'm not sure exactly how far in the processing they put it into the mold. Right, but it is molded into the shape, and it is squared off. It's got to be square. So the bottom line, all of this tefillin has to deal. We're going to see which parts of tefillin actually we're referring to. This statement that Rav Yosef is saying, "Lahukshu melecha shemayim ela or behema tahora." What's it coming to teach us? It says tefillin, but it's not really clear which part of the tefillin we need this drash to tell us that we wouldn't know from other sources without it. So the Gemara will go through with the parts of tefillin now. So once again, you can put on the side for a moment the idea of tumah and tahara and or tmei. It's really dealing with the tefillin part from here until the Mishnah, almost. So the Gemara says l'mayhach tefillin. So the Gemara says tefillin behedjiksiv. We know tefillin are actually, the Gemara thinks at this point it's really dealing with the parshiot of tefillin. The first part of tefillin that we're asking about is the parshiot of tefillin. It says tefillin behedjiksiv l'man tieh Torah Hashem beficha. When the Gemara talks about one of the psukim of it's a paragraph of Kaddish Li B'chor, it's one of the 4 paragraphs that are put into the tefillin. Okay, we just had it last week in Parshas Bo, the end of Parshas Bo 2 weeks ago, which it says Lamantia Torah Hashem B'ficha, the Torah of Hashem should be in your mouth. Now, obviously, a simple pshat means you should always be talking Torah.
Of course.
Don't talk lashon hara. Don't talk everything else. That's a waste of time. Talk only Torah. But the drash is that what the parsha of tefillin, which is where this comes from, has to be able to go into your mouth. The parchment that it's written on has to be, I won't say edible, but has to come from an animal that is a kosher animal. So if you were to want to eat the parchment without erasing the tefillin, of course, if you were to want to eat the parchment, you could eat it. I don't know of anyone that eats
Well, he's saying,
parchment.
let's say before they wrote on it, that kind of
Right,
parchment.
that kind of
he's saying.
parchment. Anyone eat parchment?
The
I don't know.
gold, didn't they put in his mouth, the Shem's name?
He didn't eat it. They pulled
But
it
they
out.
claim people that are
They pulled it
desperate
out.
to eat, really
Right, it's natural
starving and
food,
eat
yeah.
leather, chew on leather. Yeah.
Right. I'm willing to bet that animals will go for it. Rodents and scavengers will eat the leather.
Yeah.
Be quite sure they would go through this kind of stuff. It's edible. It may not be edible for you and me, but it is edible. No, we're not rodents.
There's a whole thing in Megillah about the Kesuvim, which
Right, remember
the
the
Yamayim, the Yadayim, because the animals.
The animals, remember, yeah.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Exactly, that
Excellent.
was
Correct.
exactly
So
what we learned.
but I'm saying, well, that's we know about the animals will come to eat it.
Right.
What about us?
Said your hands would be tummy
Okay.
because you wanted
I don't
to
know
make sure that
but
you.
it's organic
The mice didn't
material.
eat
Yeah, should be edible.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay, let's not all say this in public, but who eats the skin on the chicken? Shh! Don't tell anybody.
absolutely.
Okay.
My wife
So that's a
did
much thinner
My
skin,
wife's
of course,
given
but
it.
that's
My
R.
wife's
That's
given it.
R.
I love it.
Grievance.
Clearly R. Okay, so
She has a big-
yes, it's the healthiest part. We all know that. Okay. The Mantia Torah says Shem b'ficha. So the drush is min amutar Shem b'ficha. What's edible is what is actually permissible in your mouth. Is what the tefillin are going to be written. The Torah of Hashem, which is the parshios, the 4 parshios of the tefillin, are found in the Torah. That Torah has to go into your mouth. So the Gemara says, so you really don't need to tell me that it's only for more behemoth tahora. We don't need the statement of the drash of Rav Yosef. We know it already because this drasha told us a different kind of drash. So the Gemara says, Ela li'oran. Okay, no, it's really not for the parchments. It's for the actual boxes of the parchments. Where the parchments are inserted. Those 4 parchments on the 4 boxes in the rosh, or the 1 box in the shel yad. So the Gemara says, now 1 second. V'yamar Abaye, shin shel tefillin halacha l'moshe misinai. So the shin of the tefillin, this is a very interesting statement. The shin of the tefillin is a halacha l'moshe misinai, that we have to have the shin on the rosh. One side is a 3-headed shin, and the other side is a 4-headed shin. That is halacha l'moshe misinai. So what does that mean? So what's the letter shin stand for? Shaddai, right? Okay.
Goes along with your dalet and your yud.
With dal and yud, but the shin, now you notice it doesn't say dal and yud. And I'll come back to that in 1/2 a minute. I know about it. I'll come back. Give me half a minute. Hold on. So anyway, you see this letter shin, which represents the name of Hashem, is also a word from the Torah. It's the name of Hashem. The Torah is the name of Hashem. So therefore, you're going to tell me that I don't need the drash to tell me about this. Is how most of the Mepharshim understand it. I don't need the drash to tell me the parchment has to be kosher because it's Lamantia Torah Hashem Beficha. So Lamantia Torah Hashem Beficha is going to refer to the shin on the shel rosh. It may not refer to the yad, but at least I see the shel rosh. And if one tefillin has got to be kosher in the boxes, right, in the batim, then the other one needs to be kosher as well. That's how the most Rishonim learn it. So therefore, it can't be referring to the box itself, because the box will be the same kind of drasha. Lamantia Torah Hashem Beficha. So what is it got to be referring to? Elakarcham b'sa'aran v'latofram begidim. So maybe it's coming to tell me there are 2 different things. One is the second part, latofram begidim, is what someone mentioned before. I don't know if it was Archie or
Archie.
the gidim is the sinews that are used to tie up the batim after they become from a kosher animal. And the other part is that the actual parchments themselves are tied around. The ones that go in the shel rosh are tied with a hair. With the hair, and the hair sticks out at one point from the bite itself. Correct. That's also that they're tied together with hair, and they're not just folded over. Is also halacha l'moshe misinai. So this is what it means. So the karcham b'sarim, to tie them with the hair from a kosher animal, like these goat's hair or something, or the tofram begidim, and to tie them with, and to tie the batim, to sew the batim up with gidim, with sinew. This may be what we need the drush to tell me that it has to only come from our behemoth Torah. So the Gemara says once again, these things too is halacha l'moshe misinai. So the Gemara says, what am I up to? Ela lekarcha mesalan Torah from begidim. So Gemara says hanami halacha l'moshe misinai. This is also halacha Moshe Sinai.
Isn't it all halacha Moshe Sinai? Because because nothing specific to tefillin is in the Torah except you should do it. It doesn't say what the size is.
So hopefully in the next 3 lines we're going to find something that's not halacha Moshe Sinai.
Some is the Rabbanon, I would think.
Yeah.
It may not be a Rabbanan, maybe from this concept that they're saying that everything that goes into your mouth, everything that's used has to be cut from or behemoth tahora. But you're right, it's going to be a recurring response in the next 3 lines, okay? That everything is halacha Moshe Sinai. There will be one thing that hopefully we can find, okay? Stay tuned, okay? It's coming up. Okay. Now, so what is it therefore? It can't be referring to these parts. Ella, so the next thing is the Tanya, the Tanya that says, Tefillin Rubos, halacha l'Moshe Sinai, so that the tefillin have to be square as halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and nechrachos b'saran v'nisparos begidim. So this is all part of the same brisa that says that the fact that tefillin have to be square as halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and including also the fact that they're tied together with the parshiot are tied with the hairs, and they're also sewn together, nitparos, from tefirah, from sewing up a sew, begin them with the sinew themselves. So the Gemara says, well, we've kind of run through the batim, we've run through the parshios,
right.
We've now run through the gidim and the sar, so what's left? Elo l'ritzuos. Okay, so this is for the ritzuos are the straps. Okay, so the Gemara is going to say 1 second. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchak ritzuos shchoros halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Now, but guess what? The fact that the ritzuos are black is also halacha l'Moshe Sinai. We have no psukim that tells us this. So what do you need to tell me different drushes? The Gemara answers here, and here's the escape hatch. Nihi the gamir shchoros taharos mi gemiri. So in other words, it is true that the halacha l'Moshe Sinai that the straps need to be black, but we don't really have halacha l'Moshe Sinai that the straps need to be from a kosher animal.
Well, why not?
Of course, well, why not? That's why the statement of Rav Yosef come to tell me that this was included as well. Why not? Because it is included that it has to be from Or Behema Tahora. That the statement needed to tell me that I would not have known that this is necessary from Or Behema Tahora because for some reason everything else but this was a clear halacha Moshe Sinai. Now we all assume everything is halacha Moshe Sinai. This looks like this was the piece that needed to be included through the drush of Rav Yosef to say yes it is. Where he doesn't have a pasuk. So it looks like he's the one who kind of makes a statement which is telling us that too is included in halacha Moshe Sinai. So it's a very kind of strange drash because the drash itself is not really a drash. He doesn't have a pasuk. He simply has a statement. What's the statement? Where does he know it from? So you have to assume that he had this halacha Moshe Sinai. He's telling us what it really means. He's telling us that this is included in halacha Moshe Sinai. You may have only thought halacha Moshe Sinai was for the black. But you can use black pigskin or something like that. No, it's got to be from the ritzuos. Okay, now one just sidebar here, because when I said the shin, some of you said the shin has also got the daled and the yud. Right, so the Rishonim point out that why don't we say with the ritzuos that's also the Shem Hashem? If we said that we didn't, we
in the back, the daled in the back.
Yes, correct. And
you said the shin has a daled and the yud in it.
The shin is on the rosh, is scratched into the rosh.
The top of the shin could be a yud.
Right. Well, so in other words, what we did, when I said the reason that you couldn't use you didn't need the drush for the batim was because that has a Shem Hashem the shin. The question that Rishonim ask, but what about all the other letters that we spell out with the ritzuos? You have here you have a dalid. You have over here a shin. There's a shin. There's a yud here. I meant to say. There's a shin here. Okay, so there are two answers. I'm sorry.
So why don't we give the same answer?
So why don't we give the same answer? Because with ritzuos, it has to be kosher because it's the word of the name of Hashem, and therefore it's like Lamantia Tos Hashem B'Ficha. So there are two answers that are suggested. One answer is that this may only really be a minhag. In other words, the fact that the shin has to be on the shel rosh is a halacha Moshe Sinai, and if it's missing, if that is missing, then it's not tefillin.
Right.
It has to have the shin scratched in and on both sides of the shel rosh. That is a tradition going back to Moshe at Sinai. You can't argue. You got to accept it for what it is. There's no pasuk, but it's set and it's indelible and it's you can't change that. The other parts about our minhag to put the shin in the tying, that's really minhagim. It's not like the Rabbanan that we do this. And in fact, if you didn't really have it, it would still be considered tying the tefillin on. It would be considered if the yud is not there, and the final shin is not there, and the dal is not there. All these are later kinds of things, but they're not really a requirement. It's not loch l'Moshe Sinai. We just do it.
Because people have different shit.
Okay, so, but everybody has a dalit. There's at least $1 or $2, and everybody's got a yud over here. So what they're saying is that yes, we do, and the way we tie the tefillin is based upon minhag. There is no one way to tie tefillin. You've seen different people. They tie towards it, tie away from it. There are different dalit knots in the back. All of these are important, but they're really like, I don't want to say it's minhag Yisrael, it's more than minhag Yisrael, but it's a halacha, but it's not a halacha Moshe Sinai. These are much later in terms of why we do it. So that's not the same kind of response that you have to say it has to be. Okay? And in fact, if you can't do it, you still do the mitzvah of tefillin. Right? So let's say the Gemara talks about there's a whole discussion about finding tefillin in the field, and putting them on Shabbos, right? And the Gemara says, I think the Gemara discusses what about tying them. The Gemara discusses the Rishonim say, how can you tie them up? It looks like they found loose tefillin. And the Gemara's response is basically where you make a kesher lo kayama. I'm not sure how you make a kesher lo kayama, a slip knot on the shel rosh. Right, but it does mean that it looks like the knot was not a permanent knot like we have. It looks like when they put the tefillin off, they may have untied the knot, which is hard to imagine. So our knots may be not exactly the same knots that we have for the yad and the rosh that they had in the days of the Gemara. And surely there are variations among different communities what those knots are. That's one answer. That's one set of answers. So on the other hand, the shin and the rosh is a halacha-theory Sinai. The other answer that there is there's a difference between the other knots, and this you're going to argue about this perhaps in a moment, but let me just say it first, and that is that the shin that is inscribed in the tefillin is built into the tefillin. The other letters are tied on. You tie them and you can untie them. So it's not really a permanent thing. Now I know you don't undo your yud here, and you don't undo the dalet in the back. You surely undo the shin if you have the shin over there, but the other letters you don't. But they can be undone. And I'm sure you've had some kind of situation where you have to adjust the head. Your head got too big, or your head got too small suddenly, or you got too much hair, or you suddenly got less hair. Or what usually happens is the tefillin begins to stretch because all leather eventually stretches out. That's what we talked about that. So as a result, you see that you can undo them. Some knots are more complex to undo. You may want to speak to a sofer. Some knots are fairly easy to do, but they can be done. So because they are done, and even though there may be a strong history for doing so, it's not the same significance of saying that you're spelling out the name of Hashem. If it was the name of Hashem, you couldn't undo the name of Hashem. If you have a name of Hashem on a Sefer Torah, you can't scratch it out. You can't undo the name of Hashem. Right? If there's a problem with a Sefer Torah, and the problem is, and the name of Hashem is there, you have to cut that piece out. You can't scratch the name of Hashem out. You can't say, well, I don't like how the hay is, I'm going to scratch it out and start all over. That's mechika Shem Hashem. You have to cut the piece out and put some kind of patch in. You just can't, you got to be very careful when you write the name of Hashem to do it correctly. So in other words, if it was written in the Shem Hashem, but let's say you didn't write it in Ksav Ashuri correctly, so it spells out the name of Hashem, but didn't spell it out with all the tagim and this and that, things got confused, and it looks like a hey that you write when you write script or something like that, instead of hey in the Sefer Torah, that's still Shem Hashem. You can't scratch it out. The same way, if this was really Shem Hashem, you couldn't untie the Yud, you couldn't untie the Dalet. Right? So that shows you that it's not the same significance as the Dalet, as the shin that's been in the actual shel rosh. No one goes out and scratches out the shin. It's built to be in there, right? It's specifically meant to be indelible. So that's why
just a shin doesn't do anything. You got to have the whole name to do something, right?
So apparently from this Gemara you see that the shin does do something. That the shin, which
by itself?
Yeah, the shin by itself is representing the name of Hashem, even without the other letters. That's exactly what we're trying to say. That it's not, even though our minhag is you want to spell out the letters completely because you want to have the Shem Hashem really on you. V'yaru mimeka, they'll see the Shem Hashem and be fearful of you and be fearful of Hashem. But the reality is the shin is the key piece to the Shem Hashem, even though it's just the letter shin.
I think on mezuzahs too, sometimes you just see the shin.
Right, they see the shin on the outside.
The outside, that's what I'm saying.
But in the back of the mezuzah it says shin daled yud.
Yeah, but in the front sometimes.
Doesn't it?
Shin on the shel rosh.
Yes.
It's different for Ashkenazim and Sfardim.
Well, the shin is written differently from Ashkenaz and
It's
Sfardim.
3 or 4.
It's always 4, 3 or 4.
It's done differently.
Right.
One of my sons, I got him to fill in for bar mitzvah, and he wore them for 5 years or so. Then went off to yeshiva in Israel.
Someone said it was
one of the rabbis came along and said,
What kind of tefillin is it?
So there is a different ksav. That's correct. As you know, one of the major differences in ksav ashuri from the block letters you have on the these what's called the Vilna font. It's usually this kind of print is called Vilna font because it goes back to the Vilna Shas. Then one of the major differences, the shin here is flat. It's got a flat foot, flat bottom, and the shin in the Sefer Torah is pointy. In the Sephardic ksav, it's not a pointy shin. It does come to a point, but it's more flat that comes to a point, as opposed to the ksav that we have. It really the shin comes to a point.
Oh yeah, it does.
So that would be, I imagine, if that's how the shin is written on the parchment, that would be the same shin that would be pinched into the tefillin. Okay.
So what did you do? Put it
Yeah, maybe you have to check the parshas too.
I went to Rabbi Bitbol, and I said, "This is suffice." He said,
Well, yeah, no, I mean, please.
It's good.
For him,
Of course it's
Because-
good. Right, please.
No, because there probably still was a point on it.
It's still fine. It's good,
So it might have been close to the square,
I
but
really don't know. I
Boys
forgot exactly
davening
what
with
the issue
proper
was, but I remember him sending back the tefillin and.
Oh, my goodness. Ay, ay, ay.
all right. Part of the cost of growing up in the yeshiva. There you go. It's additional little there piece.
It wasn't Heimish tefillin.
Okay, no, it was Sephardi
The
tefillin. In
Ranchers
other
and the
words, fine.
Cowboys should be friends. I mean,
So what?
that song from Oklahoma.
Whatever it is, these are
Farmer
traditions.
and,
They're strong
Cowboys
traditions.
should be friends.
Okay. Anyways,
The smart and the
so as a result, it is possible, therefore, to believe, according to this, that the or behema tmei of a non-kosher animal can be makambal can be do tumas mace ohel. One may be very clear, tumas ohel of mace, and therefore it's possible the tachash was therefore a non-kosher animal. And at the same time, what would therefore be the drash that's needed to tell me that from Melechas Shemayim it can only come from Or Behema Tahora is dealing with the mitzvah of tefillin. That everybody agrees has to only come from a kosher animal, either based upon halacha-Moshe Sinai or the fact that Lamantia Torah Hashem B'Feicha, or this piece that we just learned here. So finally, the Gemara is now going to say. So we've gone back and forth about this tachash. My havi Allah. What is this? What is my havi Allah? The tachash Ha'ibi Moshe. What was actually? Did I skip a line?
No, I think it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So my havi Allah. What's going to be the din? The tachash Ha'ibi Moshe. So what are we going to say about this tachash? Was it a kosher animal? Was it a non-kosher animal? What do we know about it? We know very little. So they keep going back and forth on this because no one ever saw this thing. It was just Lashal. Right? So Amar Rabbi Law, Amar Rav Shim ben Lakish, Amar Haya Rabbi Meir, Tachash Hayabi Me Moshe Beria B'fnei Atzmahaya. Okay? So the first thing is, it was a separate kind of species. No one ever saw this before, no one ever saw it afterwards. It doesn't really answer the question yet. But here's, just keep going. They're quoting here, so they're quoting a statement of Rabbi Meir, Talmud of Rabbi Kiva. So we don't know if it was a chaya, a wild animal, or if it was a behema. Okay, it's still not really telling us whether it was a kosher or non-kosher animal, because there are wild chayas that are kosher, the wild chayas that are non-kosher. There are behemoths that are kosher, such as the cow, and there are behemoths that are non-kosher, such as the hog, the chazer, is a behemoth, correct? So we don't know what it was, and as I think we may have, I don't know if we mentioned it here, but the definition of what is a behemoth, what is a chai, is very difficult to pin down.
Blood, when you shecht it.
I would have thought
Well,
the
it has
behemoths are more domestic.
So it happens to be that it's more domestic, and chai is really less domesticated. Though, from my understanding, let me see what is this now about the reindeer. Reindeer is considered a chaya, maybe a chaya.
I would think so. Let's say
even
a
though
gazelle.
it was domesticated.
I mean, there must be kosher gazelles.
Right. Reindeer is the chaya, even though apparently those people who live up in Siberia or around the Arctic Circle have domesticated them of some sort.
For sure.
So there's all kinds of animals that we're not quite sure.
It's a member of the deer family.
The deer
But that's a
family.
chaya.
And they're chayas.
Yeah.
But up there they've domesticated.
But that's all they have up there. So in other words, it's very difficult to even define what is a behemoth, except to say that probably a behemoth is an animal that most of that kind of species or genus maybe is going to be considered domesticated, whereas chaya is going to be a group of animals that mostly are not domesticated. But it's not going to apply to every single type of the animal itself.
That's where the Yiddish expression of Vilda Chaya comes from, right?
Yes, it is.
That's
Okay,
what kind of
right there you go.
And
But you haven't said whether it's a Vilda Chaya, a treifa Vilda Chaya, or a kosher Vilda Chaya. I'm sure your mother would have called you a kosher Vilda Chaya. Okay, so they had a machlokes. So they couldn't decide whether it was a chaya, whether it was a behema. We're not finished yet. V'keren achas hoysal lo l'mitzcho, and and to make it unique, it was a unicow.
Unicorn.
No, a unideer.
It was a
unideer.
what is that? A rhinoceros or something like that?
No, that's surely not a tachash.
Not kosher.
Why not?
Yeah.
They live in lakes, live in rivers.
I don't know, because it's a different kind of Karen.
No, you're thinking of
That's a Karen.
Right.
Middle of its head.
Well, maybe. Okay, but it's hard to imagine that's what they would use for the top skin, but it's possible.
It's a heck of a skin.
We do know that there's a little bit of a description of what that skin looked like, though. It was
multicolored.
Yes.
Correct.
Oh, yes.
We talked about that last time. Correct.
Rhinoceri
Rhinoceri are not definitely multicolored. Now, by the way, the horn of a rhinoceros is much different than the horn of a deer.
It's not actually a horn.
Kind of horn.
It's a different horn. And the horn of the deers have antlers which grow and fall off.
Yeah.
And rhinoceros is basically a carotid. It's like a piece of cartilage,
Yeah, exactly.
a thick piece of cartilage that grows out. Okay, which by the way, they go try to poach them. People think they have all kinds of special aphrodisiac powers.
Yeah.
Okay, but at any rate, where are we up to? So this tachash had one horn. Okay,
on its forehead.
On its forehead, like a unideer. Okay, think you and I are not used to seeing this. This is why this was only created for then.
Exactly.
Right. Well, now the truth is, it's unusual because horns are usually there for protection. Besides for mating, they're there for protection, and most things that are there for protection have kind of backup systems.
I do too.
Right? There's always many systems in the body have backup systems: ears, eyes, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say feet because you do need 4 feet if you're a 4-footed animal, but so they have two antlers on two sides makes a lot more sense in terms of preservation than one in the center. But the rhinoceros is a good example.
And the narwhal, for example, still exists today. It has one horn in the middle of its head. The narwhal,
I don't know what it is.
it's a marine type thing, but it's the narwhal.
So the unicorn is, by the way, a horse.
Oh, and the
This looks like a type of deer. By the way, the fact that the narwhal has one horn, one I don't know what they call it.
I call it
a horn. Right? I think it's somewhat related how some of the translations about using the tachash become seals.
That's very real possibility.
Seals,
Especially with one.
the old
Chumash, which was quoting the JPS translation of 1917, translated tachash as sealskin.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it was related somehow to this kind of concept. But anyways, it can be whatever you want it to be. So they have machlokas whether it's a behem or chaya. So we haven't decided that yet. They did believe it had one horn. Well, lefi shah nizdamin lo Moshe, and just for that period of time, this animal appeared and was made available to Moshe and the Jewish people. V'yasam mimeno mishkan, they made from it the mishkan, the skins on top of the mishkan, v'nignaz, and it was hidden afterwards. Which is, by the way, fascinating, which means you can never replace it. It means the skin had to last a very long period of time. You could no repairs. You could no patchwork. You
But it was there for all the 40 years, wasn't it?
Not just them. What about Shiloh and everything?
But it wasn't there for Shiloh.
Wasn't there for Shiloh, but it was there for the 40 years.
Okay, but the base of Mikdash existed. The Mishkan existed until they came to Yerushalayim. Even in Yerushalayim, until they built the building, until Shlomo built the building, David HaMelech, when he goes to Yerushalayim, he actually's got a Mishkan there.
And the Tanakh
so
says
it's quite a lot of time.
Years.
Yes.
And during that time of Shiloh, there was a tachash skin?
I'm assuming so. It is, no?
You don't know, but it
should have been. Why wouldn't it be?
Because it wasn't around. The chash wasn't around.
But the Mishkan.
But you had the skins. The skins remained.
It lasted 400 years.
Yes.
The original one.
Skins don't last 400 years.
Honey, of course they do. Of course they do. 100% they do.
They do.
Of course, you can find kisvei yad written on vellum, on parchment that goes back to the early Middle Ages.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So let's say you find a ksav yad from the 12th century, 13th century, and it's now the 21st century. That is skin.
Yeah, they find shields and all kinds of things.
I don't think it's that unusual. Now, of course, if you keep wearing it down and keep misusing it like a coat or a set of shoes, it's not going to last.
Yeah, but this
was a ritual cover, and they looked after it. But I'm just saying it's unusual to imagine that they couldn't find anything, they couldn't replace it if something really happened. I have to assume they must have stocked a spare set of
OEM parts.
Right. Anyways, yes. Well, this we had 3D printer. Okay, Venignas, and it was hidden afterwards. So at any rate, we don't know so far really what is a kosher animal, do we? So the Gemara is going to try to learn that it was, or at least learn to understand what it was. So from the fact that it had one horn in the middle, we must be that this was a kosher animal. Why? Because we have one other reference in rabbinic literature to a one-horned animal, besides the unicorn, which is not our tradition. And that is as follows. Are you ready for this? Yom Rabbi Yehuda, Shor shehikriv adam arishon keren achas hayta lo b'mitzcha. Okay, when the story goes, this is the famous story of Adam and Chava get tossed out of the Garden of Eden, where they sin with the Eitz Hadas. According to the Medrash, this takes place, they sin with the Eitz Hadas when? Friday. Friday, if they're created. They can't even last one day. They get tossed out of the Gan Eden. However, the Or Kadmon, which was created on the primordial light on the first day of Yehi Or, still exists. So even when the sun goes down Friday night, Vayer Vayvoker Yom Shishi and Vaychul Hashman V'Aretz V'Chol Tzavam, it's still bright. Light's still light, because that primordial light is going to last for the first week until HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts it away for the tzaddikim in the Olam Hasid.
It stays for a whole week.
It stays for the whole week. So even though
a week after the
the first week of creation till the end of the first Shabbos, including Shabbos. At the end of Shabbos, when the sun goes down, the Kadosh Baruch Hu has finished the world. Everything that He built is now on autopilot. Goes back to the laws of nature, and He takes the Or Kadmon. He doesn't need it anymore. He puts it aside for the Olam Haba, for tzaddikim. He's got a sun and a moon. He's got some daylight and nighttime, and the sun goes down. And Adam and Chava begin wailing and crying because they're in pitch black. Okay. Because they have killed the sun, because they've sinned and they're thrown out of Gan Eden. I don't know what's in Gan Eden, if it's still bright in there, possibly there is. But they're outside Gan Eden, and they're in the black. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows them how to light a match, and how to take a flint, 2 stones in the
Shabbos.
Matzah Shabbos, Saturday night, Matzah Shabbos.
It's dark.
And they make light, and they create fire. And this is how the Medrash is a story of how in Judaism, man creates and develops fire. And then so that they're able to build a campfire for Saturday night. They have no idea what's going to happen. They think that's how they're going to live out the rest of their years. They think that's it, because they've never experienced life. They're only one day old, right? This is the first time the lights have gone out. So sure enough, what happens in the morning, the sun comes up, and all their fears and concerns and wondering what will happen is put to rest, and they recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made a world that the sun will always rise. There will be moments of darkness, but there will be the light as well. And Adam Arishon and Chava, or Adam Arishon, brings a shor to give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is, by the way, the first carbon in rabbinic literature that is brought, and I believe in the Midrashic literature it might be brought on the Har HaBayis. Okay? Where else? Not Shor HaBar, the Shor of Adam Arishon.
Okay.
Which was supposed to be a very large shor, humongous shor, of course, because in Medrash hyperbole everything is large that's good. So this shor, according to the legend, we're only going to get one part of the Medrash here. According to the legend, this shor was a special shor. It only had one horn. Okay? And how do you know that? So the Gemara brings a reference from Tehillim that it interprets to refer to this event. It doesn't look like it's referring to Adam Arishon, but it uses this pasuk, and you recognize the pasuk in Tehillim, to make the application to the Adam Arishon story. We're good so far? You like the story?
Yeah,
good, okay?
It's quite a story.
It is quite a story. So therefore, what's the pasuk? The Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Shor Shikri Adam Arishon Karanachas Chaistalov Mitzvah, had one horn in its forehead. By the way, we know now where the horn of the Adam Arishon shor was, in the forehead, specifically, right in the center. And Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, Samachtes, V'titav Lashem Mishar Par Makrin Mafris Makrin Mafris. So it says that V'titav Lashem Mishar Par, he will look to God to good from the shor par, the oxen of the par, Makrin from the keren of Mafris of the divided hoof, the split hoof.
Right.
So this pasuk is applied to Adam Arishon, who is praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu for bringing back the sun, and that everything will work out and look after him and so forth. So it's a carbon toda, v'titav Lashem par, v'titav Lashem shor par, makrin mafris, that's applied to this. The Gemara says, okay, that's a great drash. However, it says makrin, it looks like makrin it is horned. It is horned, like multi-horned.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says makrin tarti mashma. So makrin means horned, is like saying the animal has horns. That's more than one. What are you trying to tell me? It's one horn. Why is it important if this has one horn? Because if we know that the shor had one horn, then we at least have some kind of template by a special kind of unique animal that was unique for Adam, was also unique for Moshe Rabbeinu. It would also be a one-horned animal that would not only be, now that we know it's a kosher animal, but we could also learn that it would be what kind of animal, a behemoth or a chaya. Well, what's a shor? Shor is a behemoth. So in other words, we're assuming that this kind of animal has a templated history that was put in place. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make another single horn animal, it's got to be the same kind of animal. Which means it's going to be a behemoth, and it's going to be a kosher behemoth, which would tell us, therefore, the tachash was going to be a kosher animal, and it would be a kosher behemoth on top of that. So Gemara says, so it says makrin, it says tarti mashrin. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak, don't read it makrin, ela mikeren. Don't read it makrin, it is horned, but it has from one horn. He brought from the shore which had one horn, he brought to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
What's the word mafris?
Mafris is from mafris buffers. Right, so it was horn from split hoofs.
Split hoof.
So you see, by the way, this shore was clearly a kosher animal, has split hoofs. It's called the shore in Tilim. And if you make the application to Adam Rishon, and if you say that makrin does not mean horn, which can mean multi-horn, two-horn, but mikeren, so then you have a one-horn shore, a unicow, ox that the Adam Rishon brings, and therefore would be the template for the tachash, which is now a kosher animal. So this, let's just stop for half a second. So this becomes the proof. This is the proof, because we have no better proof than this, that the tachash was a kosher animal. Okay, now and I almost was going to say it's a kosher behema, but you're going to see in a moment the Gemara is going to say that may not be true. But at least we know it's a kosher shor. It's like the shor was kosher, a mafris parsa with split hoofs, and was a shor, and looked like a shor, walked like a shor, quacked like a shor, didn't quack like a shor, bellowed like a shor. So therefore this tachash was also one-horned in the same way. How do you know it was one-horned? We don't know. It's obviously a tradition that this is the type of animal it was. But based upon this medrash. So Gemara says, so we know it's, so at any rate we've now determined this was kosher. That's the most important stuff. What have we done? We validated the fact that that surely the skins that were used in the Mishkan were only used of kosher animals, because the only animals we know are elim. Ayal is a kosher ram, and the tachash is now a kosher animal. So the last piece of this, last 4 lines of the Gemara, the last 3 lines of the Gemara, v'livshod minei demin behemahu. So if you already determined that it's a kosher animal, let's say that this tachash now, that we now know we've determined as kosher, is a kosher behema, not a chaya. So the Gemara says, well, not so fast. Kevanika keresh, this gets more fantastic. Kevanika keresh, the min chayahu, v'lesle elachada keren, so ikalamema min chayahu. So the Gemara says, you know what, there actually was another kind of one-horned animal, which is called a keresh. I don't know how they translate keresh is. It's surely an animal that we've never seen this is. But this was some kind of wild deer.
Single-horned deal.
Single-horned deer.
Where did they have this from? Where did the keresh come
It seems to be that they had a tradition that this existed. Okay, not in the days of Adam Arishon, not in the days of the Tachash of Moshe. It seems that there was some kind of tradition that they had, that there was a one-horned wild deer running around the world somewhere or the other, in who knows where.
And the Aruch describes it as a giant beast.
Okay, so a large one-horned deer. But the bottom...
whose horn has many medicinal properties.
Good. Okay, it's not the rhinoceros. No, it's it's like this was a large deer, which is a kosher animal, right? Yeah. But it's a humongous kind of single-horned large deer. However, it's not a behema; it's a chaya. So the conclusion of the Gemara is, and I know it's not going to be fully satisfying because we haven't really wrapped it up, but we've accepted all these fantastic midrashim, but the conclusion of the Gemara is, therefore, the tachash itself was a kosher animal. We're not really convinced if it was considered a behema or a chaya. Even though these are wild tachashim that were running around, it still may have been a behema. But we do know that there was apparently a one-horned cow, which was a behema for Adam Rishon, and there was one-horned kereshes that were running around, or they had a history perhaps of running around sometime in the past or present, not clear when this was, which they were aware and they had possibly seen as well. I don't know which is the one-horned deer, what it looks like.
I don't know. Rav Steinsaltz, by the way,
has a picture?
Talks about a dagong. He says there's a whole bunch of experts. There's a machloket between these chokrim rabim, a lot of these investigators. So I thought of a narwhal, but I see he's got a dagong. I've heard of a dugong. I didn't realize.
Is that an animal?
What kind of animal is
these
it?
Are animals. These are animals. These are animals. He's got a whole long note there. But,
well, I should look up Slifkin, what the Slifkin has to say about this.
What is it? Like it's an animal?
it's also a marine animal, I think.
A dugong. A dugong is related to the narwhal.
It's like
a manatee or something. Yeah.
These are like marine type animals that have like one horn in the center of their head.
I think it's related to the narwhal. Okay,
Which are water animals?
Yeah, which would not be a kosher animal. Okay?
Well, it wouldn't be kosher for sure.
Right.
It's a mammal, right. I think.
Like a dolphin or something.
Yeah, like that, except they have a single horn.
But I think it is related to, or is the narwhal. Okay.
Could be. I don't know. I thought of a narwhal before I saw this.
Anyway, I believe the Gemara's conclusion, based on all this, is the fact that the tachash was considered a kosher animal.
Yes.
Narwhal is not a kosher animal, as far as we
sure,
know.
for
Okay.
sure.
Does not have fins and scales. Remember, in the Gemara's view of animals, anything that swims is considered a fish.
Yeah, right.
No, it's not. It's going to be defined by the kosher rules of fish.
Fish.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know what it is.
For sure.
So this is not going
We're
to
just talking about a covering, not eating. But
right. Correct. Okay, at any rate, that's really the conclusion, and we're never going to see the narwhal to find out whether it really was a kosher animal or not. Okay.
Again,
We're not terribly concerned. It's really irrelevant to the Gemara's discussion if it's a behemoth or a chaya.
Right, correct. We're not actually that concerned whether it was kosher or not kosher, because we don't have a base mikdash right now either.
Right,
Whether-
I mean for the purpose of the
Right.
discussion in the Gemara,
Right.
we need to know whether it's kosher or not.
Correct. For the discussion, the Gemara needs to prove this about in terms of whether our behemoth tmeh is going to be makabel toma. Correct. That would be the application for that. In terms of the only application for us in terms of deer, in terms of wild animal or behemoth, really has to deal with the chalev that are on the back half of the animal. There's no chalev. There's no prohibited chalev on a birds. There's no prohibited chalev on chayos. There is a lot of prohibited chalev on behemoths, right? I think we've talked about this. Gid anashe is prohibited on all four-legged animals, both behemoths and chayos. You have to take out the gid anashe. So if you do process venison, you do have to take out the gid anashe, but that's only one part of what is taken off of the hindquarters. And the Gemara, for those who are learning chulin now, the Gemara has a whole lot of discussions about what defines chalev tahar and chalev tameh. That's the terms they use in the Gemara. We tend to use the biblical terms, sometimes use chalev and shuman. They look very similar in many cases. The Gemara makes some differences between them, whether you can peel it back or not peel it back, whether it's draping or whether it's more closely attached. But you really have to have the Masorah to know what to pull out. And it's very tedious work. It's extremely tedious work. I sometimes forget, I don't know if I said this, so stop me if I have. I once had a butcher show me how he does trabering on a kosher animal. It was a long time before I came to Toronto. I knew a butcher, and I said, "Can you do me a favor? I've never seen this done. Once in my life, I want to see what you do with a side of beef." And he showed me, and he was following a Masorah from Washington Heights, a German Masorah, Yekish Masorah, that he had been trained, and he was actually pointing out, this we take, this we don't take, this some people take, some people don't take. But he was showing me how complicated it is, because you have to take out the two types of gidim you take out. And this is the four quarters of the animal. Right, you have to take out, first of all, gidim means sinew, but sinew can mean any kind of sinew. Mm-hmm. In other words, gidim can be a nerve sinew, can be a major blood vessel, or it can be some kind of sinew that we talk like about tying up the tefillin. That's also called gidim. So there are major arteries or probably veins that have to be removed in order to remove the dam. There are pieces of chalev that is taken out even from the four quarters of the animal, but most of it is in the back of the animal. In the same way that you and I, without trying to be here, I mean, we all have a lot more chalev back here, right, than we have up here on the top of our body. It's just the way people and animals are created. So as a result, the back half of the animal is going to have more chalev, just by virtue of the fact that's where the animal stores fat. And if you see when they take apart the animal, it's got tons of fat all over different places. Every once in a while, you got a piece of beef, and there's like a piece of like a ribbon of fat running through it. But there's tons more that has to be taken out. That's just for the four quarters, right? That's just for the four quarters. The hind quarters was doubly difficult, which we don't do today. But I have to tell you the difference between a good butcher and a bad butcher if they know how to traber properly, because otherwise they make a mess of the meat, or they don't take out what needs to be taken out.
I think remember in Israel.
I can't recall how long it took. It surely was probably an hour of my time watching him, and he was. I remember, he was a small time butcher. He actually did. It was very funny. He had a bathtub, it's like a real bathtub, like a bathtub that you have in your house. Yeah. That's what he used. I said, a bathtub and a butcher shop, he says, is the cheapest thing to get. What else do I need? I need something big to put on the side of beef to work on top of, right? To wash it down and so forth.
Makes sense. I seem to remember years ago in Israel getting hind.
You can get hindquarters in Eretz Yisrael. That's correct.
Right. It was expensive, as I recall, but it was like
they do in Israel.
Yeah.
They do it in Eretz Yisrael. You can get a sirloin steak. You can get all kinds of spare ribs.
In Argentina, and they imported it. Don't they do the shechita in Argentina?
That I don't know.
Well, it's not where they do the shechita. Some shechita is done locally. Some shechita is done in Argentina. The question is actually trabering it. They do the nikra on the back half of the animal. Here we don't. Right. Here we simply process the animal. The whole rear quarters of the animal is sent off as trafe.
Right.
Right. there was So what ends up happening in the 1700s is, as things get more commercialized, the monachrim were put under a lot more pressure to do this. The business is starting to try to become more efficient in the 1700s, and they're putting the monachrim under pressure to do this. So they start getting sloppy, and they start trying to work too fast, and there's all kinds of issues that come up. That's why at that point, until about the 1700s, everybody used to eat the back end of the animal. So they found out that because they're living in Goyish countries, it's not that hard to simply do the back half of the animal and just send it off as treif. Right? It's not efficient for time. It's very complex and very difficult. They usually need they would have one menaker check the work of the first menaker. It was so complicated. So a lot of rabbanim, a lot of communities also the hindquarters. In Sephardic lands, they never had this. It's only in the more mechanized Ashkenazi lands where it takes place.
So this butcher you went to see, he did it.
He didn't do the hindquarters, just the front quarters. Just showing the forequarters is complicated.
So he did the back just for you?
No, he did the front. He did the front. I never saw the back. He only got the forequarters. I'm just telling you. Even doing the front half of the animal it's not a walk in the park.
I see.
So that's the easy part of the animal. The back half of the animal, which we don't get and he didn't get, is a nightmare. Not a nightmare. It's just hours and hours of work. The front half of the animal was work.
I understood you. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make sense.
It's okay. Wow.
Now, the issue came up, just one point to this, one footnote to this, many people don't know. When the issue came up about whether they could start to do nikur, was this a prohibition that was accepted like a minhag, right? And once you accept the minhag, you can't do it. You're stuck forever. Or was this really more of an economic kind of thing? Like if you don't want to eat something because it's economically too expensive, doesn't mean that you suddenly took a chumrah, right? If I suddenly say that I can't afford to buy, pickled tongue, and I never eat pickled tongue, it doesn't mean that that's a chumrah. That just means I can't afford pickled tongue. I want to buy, salami. Okay, because I'm a poor guy. So that's not a chumrah, that's just economics. So the issue came up in a couple of countries, but particularly it came up, it's a fascinating footnote to European Jewry right on the eve of the Holocaust in 1936 in Poland. And most people don't know this because Polish Jewry starts to get wiped out 3 years later. Poland is still independent. They have a Sen, they have a parliament. And under the guise of being humane and being concerned about the Jews, they passed the following rule. The rule was that kosher shechita was permissible, but the only people who could eat from an animal that was geshachted kosher shechita were Yidden. It's very funny. It was funny.
It's totally non-economic.
So in other words, at that point, what they had done until now, if they shechted the animal and they found there was a treifa, they would sell it off to a non-kosher butcher, right? They couldn't do that. That wasn't such a big problem because most of the animals that are shechted, most of them come out kosher, right? Every once in a while you find a sircha, it's not glad kosher. Every once in a while the animal is treif, but it's not more than 20%. The real problem was the back half of every animal is being sent off as non-kosher because they weren't treifing the back half of the animal. Now they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that because the only people who could eat from kosher shechita would be Yidden.
What was the purpose of that law?
It was anti-Semitic.
Okay, fair enough.
It was anti-Semitic, but it was done under the guise of being humane to animals. So we don't want to do shechita, but our good, friendly brothers, the Yidden who do shechita, we're going to allow them, but no Pole can eat from their shechita. So the upshot was it made it economically disastrous to do shechita because every animal they were going to lose probably 50% of the animal. It's not like one out of 20 animals was going to become treif. It was 1/2 of every shechita would double the price. So there's a large discussion in Europe among the Gdolim, including Rav Chaim Moshe Grudzinski, who's matir, and others are matir, to say that it's allowed to go back to do trabering at that point. The only reason they didn't do trabering was because it wasn't needed. But now that this is mamish, this is like, it's impossible to eat meat otherwise, they can go back and they had to train shachtim to begin to learn it and do it and so forth. Now, so the sad part about the whole story, it's a mice of 3 years. In 1939, right? That's it. The whole story falls apart. But this is really where you find trabering coming up. The next time that you have it really is probably about the last 20 years or so, where Jews suddenly have rich, exotic tastes, and that they've never tasted. Right. So I was reading a story about a rabbi who was dealing with a non-religious chassan and kala, and he was telling them about how you have to have a kosher wedding and all that. And the kala said, "But I don't want to only eat the kosher cuts." And he didn't know what she meant. What are the kosher cuts? The other kosher cuts are only the 4 quarters. She wanted to eat the real quarters, right, which she's used to eating. She says every time you go to a Jewish wedding, it's the same cuts. You and I don't know any difference, right? Sure. But for I guess if you eat the other pieces, the sirloin and the whatever the back, the oxtail soup,
T-bone, I think.
I don't know. I just know the sirloin steak is from the back, okay, and there are other pieces as well. So unless you go to Eretz Yisrael, you go to Sephardi country, which probably don't exist anymore. You cannot get here in this continent. You cannot get the back half of the animal.
What's the restaurant in Montreal where there was Sephardi shechita?
Okay.
Where you could get these cuts.
Yeah,
apparently.
Probably. Okay, it's very
I don't know where they got it from.
I'm saying if they take the trouble, you can do it.
The shoichet or the butcher?
The butcher.
We had it in Israel.
The butcher. It's done here in the butcher.
Right. So you were saying that it was the butcher who was showing this.
Who was showing this for the front? That's who does it.
But for the back.
He doesn't get the back.
But those 3 years in Poland.
Then
it was the shoichet.
Yeah.
No, they tried to train people who are. I don't know who did it. If they did it in the shlachtos or they did it in the butcher, I don't know how they would do it. They probably had to do it then in the shlachtos because they didn't know how to do it. They had to train people how to do it. But I'm saying I don't know that detail, but I do know it's a very sad part of Polish history.
Who would, like, if you had to train someone today, who would you get to train? You have to go to Israel and bring someone.
You have to go find Sephardi people who know how to do it, right?
Like you say, there might be people
but to learn how to do this is like one of these things where you need someone to teach you and show you how to do it. You can't do it on YouTube, right? So
there's no YouTube. I'll Google it. There's the YouTube.
Well, you can actually see how there are YouTubes about how they do shechita. There are YouTubes today about how they do how they do these things. Everything's out there. If you're anyone who's studying chulin, you can go find it. It's not that hard. So the guy who wrote the Sichas Chulin was here in town a few weeks ago. He showed how they find the treifas, and then I found out afterwards, the week after he did it, he did a live presentation out of Brooklyn, which I saw for 3 hours on a Saturday night. He brought in a little cobble, he brought in a calf, a small calf, and he took it up.
Was it a YouTube video?
No, it wasn't saved on YouTube. It was saved on a live stream. It was saved on some kind of stream. But I couldn't find the whole thing. They only saved the last hour at that point. But he went through piece by piece. Well, the animal was dead already. It was very shachted, but he showed you all the different pieces.
He showed you how
but you won't appreciate it unless you're studying chul, unless you're doing daf yomi. It's just like one after the other. Here's this membrane, this, that, and now when I did it, now you see it learn. It makes a lot of sense. So, but everything is out there. So, yeah. So that's in terms of doing the actual nikkur itself. So you don't really see it today. But one final point, and we're pretty much out of time. And that is that in terms, and this I may have said, I can't recall, that in terms of actually venison, okay, so there's the difficulty of doing the hind quarter is primarily the chelev, okay. However, you also have to take out the gid hanasha. We don't have to deal with the gid hanasha when we only get the 4 quarters, because the gid hanasha is the back half of the animal, right? The gid hanasha is a spoon-shaped piece of bone or socket, like where the sciatic nerve runs over on top of it. And we think there are two. We think there's the real nerve that's further in towards the back of the leg, and then we also don't eat the another nerve that's called the gid hachitzon, that's a drabanan, etc., etc. But it's nowhere near what we're going to eat, because just think of where your legs come off of the back of your spine, the end of your spine. At any rate, what happens with chayas? Chayas also have a gid hanasha, but they don't have a prohibition of chelev. So in the United States, you can actually get venison that is kosher slaughtered, okay, and they do take out the gid hanasha. Now this is, I know this OU does it for sure, and I think other hashgachas do it as well, and I believe Starkey also does it. It's with the tricky part here is probably, if you had to compare taking out the gid hanasha with taking out chelev, the gid hanasha is probably more tricky to take out, because you need to cut it out. In fact, the guy from Sichas Chulin showed us on the calf. He showed us actually where the gid hanasha was. You've got to pull out the whole thing. You've got to be able to kind of dislodge it from where it runs down and pull out the whole thing end to end. Because according to the way we understand the chumash of it, we take out the whole sciatic sinew that goes from the where it comes off of the vertebrae all the way down to the end. So you can't just really cut it out. You're never going to get it. You got to be able to pull it away and snap it out. So that is probably the trickier part of the two things to do, but it surely is a lot less time to do it. So the OU says that they do it. I believe in this country, at least in Ontario, I don't believe the COR. You can. I didn't check with the COR, so
this is only
for venison.
For venison.
we don't
For
have
venison.
here.
You don't have to worry about the chaylev, he said.
Here, domestically.
Why can't you?
Well, does anyone do it?
For venison, they do. Sure, they do.
They go hunting.
No, but you can't raise them. You can't raise deer.
I thought you couldn't raise them domestically.
You can raise them. You can raise anything domestically. You just got to give them enough place to run. So they're wild animal, unlike wild range animal. But you give them enough wild range, you can raise them, and you raise them for X number of weeks or months, then you chef them. But the point is, you don't have to worry about the chaylev, you don't have to worry about the whole back half of the animal, but you have to worry about the giranasha. As far as I know, in this country, and surely not in Ontario, you cannot get kosher venison. Okay. Then there's a whole discussion about whether bison is kosher or not, whether bison is a chaya or a behema. I know you can get bison there, but I don't believe that they do the backwaters either. I think they treat it as a suffix behema. The difference between a behema and a chaya, once again, is going to be about the chaylev. So is the bison, which of course was the Native Americans would keep on the range and they would stampede them and kill them, is that considered a chaya or a behema? That's a machlokes.
Is there a Masorah for that?
Depends if you're indigenous.
There's no Masorah. What kind of Masorah? You have to ask the...
No, you don't need a Masorah.
You don't need a Masorah. You need
Simonim.
Simonim.
You also need a Masorah.
You do need a Masorah, so
because there are these cows they have in India.
Yes.
That's all.
Which are part of the...
Well, I can tell you something.
There.
So I don't know. Maybe there are different versions of what the Masorah is, but you can get bison. I once had bison down south of the border. Okay?
I went to buy,
under Star Keyashkacha.
Yeah, I went to buy it.
But it was only one sub, and I think it was overdone, so I really couldn't really get the taste. Cause it was, okay. But once again, that's another case of chaya versus behema, which is not clarified. But a deer is clearly a chaya, but you do have to take out the giranasha.
They also sell, which I was surprised, the tail. Which I didn't understand. Was in a kosher place
in this country,
in the States.
Yes,
and they had the tail,
oxtail soup. Really?
And I asked my brother-in-law because I looked at it and I thought it was part of the hindquarters.
I guess so. I don't
know.
know.
It's not. The tail doesn't count.
I don't know. There you go. Something for you guys to find out for next week.
But I remember looking at it and I saw it and it was a kosher.
Okay. Interesting piece of Gemara on this Mishnah. Let's look at what the Mishnah says. Remember, this is the whole parak of Amem and deals with different kinds of wicks and oils. Okay. So the Mishnah says as follows. A very straightforward Mishnah, deals with Shabbos and deals with Tuma. Our old friend Tuma is back. Okay? So, and it's an interesting piece of Gemara because the Gemara tries to give two explanations. It gives an explanation about the Tuma part of the Mishnah. Then it gives an explanation about the Shabbos part of the Mishnah. Then it gives a second explanation about the Shabbos part of the Mishnah. And then it goes back and gives a second interpretation about the Tuma part of the Mishnah. So I don't know, somehow the sugya gets a little back and forth, but it's really straightforward to be able to go through it. Chav Chet Amud Bez in the Mishnah. Psilat HaBeged, Shekif Lov Lov Hava. This is if you have a wick that's made out of a garment that you folded over. You got a leftover piece of shmata from a garment.
I'm sorry, where are you?
I'm sorry, Chav Chet Amud Bet. 28B, Chav Chet Amud Bet, the Mishnah. The Mishnah is about 2/3 of the way down. Okay, so you're making a wick out of a piece of garment, a piece of cloth. So I have a piece of garment, and I fold it over, so that I take this piece of garment, think of this as like, I don't know, the end of a handkerchief or something, an end of a rag. I fold it over to make it a thin wick, and I have not hivhava, I have not scorched it, so that the flame will catch onto it. So I have the raw material, but if I really wanted to be able to catch when I put a match to it, we don't have matches, whatever the wood chips were, I wanted to singe the end of the fabric so it would be more ready to be able to accept the flame. Okay? There's a halacha that the men are supposed to singe the wicks before Shabbos for the women. Everybody know this?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay? I told my wife that the wicks are not made that way anymore today. They really aren't. They're really set, especially the ones you put in the holes. She says, "You're right. Okay, put the candles out."
But it's interesting you say that because in the country, like the cottage, when Shabbos is so late, and I'm worried about the flames going too long, I actually
cut them down.
Yeah, I cut, and then I have to cut so the wick will, still be whatever.
Right, you have to pull the wick out. Right. So this wick itself is a handmade wick that's made out of a piece of cloth. The wicks that you normally think of are actually already immersed into the wax. But this was simply a loose thing of this is like a wick that you put into a Hanukkah menorah that has oil or something like that. So you took the fabric and you folded it up, but you hadn't yet singed it. So Rabbi Elazar Omer Rabbi Elazar says it's mitame, which means it's still considered a garment. Garment can become tamei. Not that it is tamei; it can become tamei. It can become tamei because it's a garment. Loose material is not yet finished, and a garment that's no longer a garment is not going to become tamei. So if I have the wick that is taken from a garment that I have not fully turned into a wick because I haven't singed it, so Rabbi Elazar says it's tmeo hivi ein madlikin ba, and I can't use it for Shabbos candles. And Rabbi Akiva mer tahor hi madlikin ba. The exact reverse is Rabbi Akiva. It's tahor, which means it's no longer considered a beged. Right? I've changed the status to become a wick. It's no longer a beged. Wick is not a garment. A wick is a wick. And I also can use it for lighting for Shabbos. So there are two separate halachas here. And Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva argue on two things. One is about tumah tara, right? Whether this wick, which you took a piece of garment and I turned into a wick, can be mitame. And the second machlokas is, can I use it for making a wick for lighting on Shabbos, even though I haven't singed it and made it fully ready to go?
Is a garment normally liable to tumah under what condition?
Yeah, sure, a garment can become tumah.
It's 3x3 or whatever.
Yes, it provides 3x3.
It has to be 3x3.
So we'll see some of the discussion is how big it's actually going to be.
Right.
Okay.
It's like a kli.
It's like a kli. Right,
it's
correct.
Like a kli.
Correct.
Yeah, but this
So
is
it's
pretty
Makabel
small.
tumah.
This is a small thing, right?
So we don't know exactly how big it is at this point, but you'll see in a couple of minutes that we're dealing with a very small size garment. And the moment I fold it and I begin to prepare it, I may be detracting from it. Okay, so it gets even smaller than that. Okay, but once again, there's two machloks, and one is about tumah,
Right.
and one is about Shabbos. So I told you the structure of the sugya is going to be, it's going to deal with the reason for tumah, then it's going to give the reason for Shabbos, a second reason for Shabbos, and then gives a second reason for tumah. Just the style of the sugya. So the Gemara starts as follows: Bishlam alinyan tumah. Regarding the laws of tumah, baha pligi. We understand what the machlokas is. The Rabbi Eliezer savar kipol eina moel. That when you fold something up, or you fold over this piece of garment, it doesn't help to change it from its status of what it is. Uva milsa kamaisa kaima, and it still exists what it was. The only time it stops becoming a garment is when it gets consumed. Right, when I light it, perhaps when it becomes part of a candle. But the moment I fold it and I prepare it to become a wick, it's still considered a garment that's being prepared to become a wick. And as a result, says Rav Elazar, it can become tamei, like a kli, like a beged. Rav Akiva savar kipol moel uvitule batil. And Rav Akiva says, no, the moment I fold it over, that helps to take it away from being a beged, and it's batal from being a beged, and therefore it's no longer considered beged, so therefore it can contract tumah and will remain tahar. Okay, so it's a different type, it's a different definition of what it actually is. So far we've given the interpretation of what the machlok is about tumah.
Right.
That's interpretation one for tumah. That's easy. Okay, now we go to Shabbos. So I understand what the machlokas about tumah is. Ela linyan hadlaka b'maik pligi. What's the machlokas? Why Rabbi Elazar says you can't light it on Shabbos, and Rabbi Akiva says you can use this to light as a wick on Shabbos. Okay, what's so bad about using this, or what's so good about it? So I'm Rav Elazar, I'm Rav Oshai, v'chenem Rav Ada ba'ava. Hacha, the case is as follows: Begimel al gimel mitzumtzamos askinan. We're dealing here with a beged that is 3 by 3, exactly 3 by 3. Okay, and here's what let me explain to you what we're going to get into. That if I light, I can use a beged to burn. Oh, I'm sorry, the other way around. A beged is something that is available to me on Erev Shabbos, so I can. I'm sorry. Let me back up a step. Let's take Yontif, for example. If I had a beged and I wanted to use a beged for some use, I could use it on Yontif. If I wanted to use the beged to serve, to burn it, and destroy it to get the heat from it, I could do that as well on Yontif. Okay, when I have something that's not what it was, it's sometimes called nolad. So if I have a brand new object that didn't exist the way it was before Yontif, it's called nolad. Nolad was not in my mind to be used because it didn't exist the way it is, and therefore I can't use it on Yontif and I couldn't use it on Shabbos. It's a form of muktzah. Does this make sense? Okay. So the case is the following: Begimel agimel mitzubtzamos. The beged we're talking about that we're folding up into a wick is 3 by 3 tefachim exactly, askinon. And we're not dealing with a regular Shabbos. We're dealing with Yontiv shechaliot be'erev Shabbos askinon. We're dealing with Yontiv as an erev Shabbos. So when I'm lighting the Shabbos candles, what is it? Friday is still Yontiv. So I'm lighting the Shabbos candles at the end of Yontif of Friday. And the Kuli Alma Islay Rabbi Yehuda. Everybody follows Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that muktzah is aser, and one of the forms of muktzah is going to be nolad. The Amar Ha'amar, who says masikim b'kelim v'masikim b'shivrei kelim. So Rabbi Yehuda says I can use on Yontif, I can light with an object that was utensil before when Yontif started, because I had in mind to use that keli, and a kli can mean utensil, kli can also mean a garment. But v'masikim b'shivrei kelim. But I can't light with a kli that broke into something else on Yontif, because that's not considered nolad. That has a new identity. So when I had this garment that's 3 by 3, and I folded it over into a wick, and now I light it, what happens? Am I changing it from a garment into shivrei kelim, or am I not? Let's read it through. Udekuli alma islay de ula, and everybody holds from ula. The amar ula hamadlik tzarch shiadlik barov hayotze. When I light the candle, I got to make sure I really light that candle, that the wick really takes hold, the wick gets consumed. So therefore, here's the machloket. Once again, the two premises we have is we're dealing here with a 3 by 3 minimal piece of cloth. It's still a cloth before I fold it, and even when I fold it, it's a cloth until I begin to light it. The second rule is that we're following Rabbi Yehuda, who says I can't use nolad, and shivrei kelim is going to be nolad. And the third thing, when I light it, I really got to light it so that the entire wick takes a hold and really becomes burnt up, consumed when I light it. So here's the machlokes. Rav Elazar Savar, Kipol Eino Moel. So Rav Elazar says, when I fold up this garment, it's still really a garment. It didn't take away its identity from being a garment. The same Rabbi Eliezer, who says that it's still going to become tameh, because folding up the garment didn't change its identity, it's still a garment, is going to say, when I fold up the garment to light it, it's still a piece of garment. V'chevan the idlik ba'porte have a shever kli. And the moment that I light it, the moment I light a little bit, the moment that I begin to light it, it becomes a shever kli. And when I'm lighting the rest of it, v'ki komadlik b'shever kli komadlik. And when I continue lighting the rest of it, I'm lighting now something that is nolad, because it's no longer considered a beged. Why is it now considered shever kli? Because the moment that I light the wick, I've detracted from it's no longer 3 by 3. Right. It's no longer 3 by 3. It's no longer a beged. Something new. It's a piece of a beged, right. And a piece of a beged is now nolad. I didn't have in mind to use nolad, right? So the moment that I light it and continue to light it, because it's not just putting the fire to the wick. I have to make sure the fire takes a hold of most of the wick. The moment that I really continue to make sure the fire takes a hold of most of the wick, I'm using a piece of a broken piece of a kli, because it is less than the minimum size of a kli. So the premise is, when I folded it up, I didn't change it from being a kli. So I have this 3 by 3 piece of rag, and now I folded it over. It's still a 3 by 3 piece of rag. I put it in as the wick. I lit it. Okay, and now it's become less than 3 by 3, but I still have to light it to make sure it's fully taking hold of the rove of the wick. Now I'm using something that is nolad, which didn't exist before. That's the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. And therefore I can't use that on Shabbos, because the Shabbos I'm talking about is a specific case of Shabbos, which is Yontif is Erev Shabbos. Okay? It's not the only answer to the Gemara. So you have to make a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4 premises, and it's got to be Erev Shabbos of Erev Shabbos of Yontif, or Shabbos of post Yontif. Or Erev Shabbos is Yontif, right. So what's going to be the other opinion? For Rabbi Kiva Savar, so why is that not a problem for Rabbi Kiva? Rabbi Kiva says I can use it. Rabbi Kiva Savar, Kipel Moel. No, when I fold it over, that changes it from being a Kli.
Right.
So it's no longer a Kli. What is it now considered? It's a wick. The same way, and therefore, once it becomes a wick, it's no longer a kli, and therefore it can't become tummy. It can become tahar. That's what Rabbi Kiva said about the laws of tum and tara. But at the same time, it's ain't Torah's kli alav. It's not shivrei kelim. It doesn't become a broken piece of pottery. It's something. It's a wick. It's changed. It's the same piece, but it's become a wick. And when I light it, when I light it, it's like I'm lighting a piece of wood. It was a kli. Now, according to Rabbi Kiva, it looks like he doesn't hold. It becomes nolad,
right?
Because it's still a garment, but the garment is no longer changed. It's not a broken garment like Rabbi Eliezer, because it's still whole, but it's no longer considered garment. It's now changed into becoming a garment that's now a wick.
Yeah, it's a wick.
Right, but it's 3x3 wick. 3x3 garment. Now it's a 3x3 wick. The moment that I light it, I'm no longer detracting from the garment to make it a broken garment, shivrei kelim, which would be usher because of nolad. I'm lighting a piece of wood, big piece of wood, little piece of wood. When I light it, continue to light it to make sure that the fire takes over most of this wick. It's no longer breaking down, no longer dealing with a broken kli. I'm dealing here with like a piece of wood, like a non-kli altogether. So that is the interpretation, the first interpretation of why the Rabbi Lez and Rabbi Akiva argue about Tuma and Tara and about lighting and not lighting. And it's the same machlokas. Because the same machlokas is when I fold it, do I change it from being a garment to something else, or it stays being a garment? Exactly. If I say it stays being a garment, which is Rav Elazar, then it can become tameh. If it stays being a garment, when I light it and continue to light it until the wick is completely consumed, then I'm dealing with shivrei kli, a broken kli, because it's less than 3x3. It's no longer a kli, it's broken pieces of a kli, so that's aser. And if I say when I fold it over, it takes it away from being a beged, so therefore it can't become tameh, it's tahar, and as a result, it's no longer breaking it down, because it's not considered beged, it's not considered psila.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
Simple.
Since I'm folding though, isn't that nolad?
So it looks like Rabbi Kiva says it's not nolad because it's the same thing. It's the same object that just didn't change, just changed in its identity. Nolad is something brand new that didn't exist before. So what's brand new? If I have a cup and the cup breaks into different pieces, so that's not a cup anymore because it's broken. It's changed to what it is. If I have an egg, before the egg was hatched and before the egg was laid, now the egg is laid. So the egg comes out, it could be a case of nolad. Right? Water from the clouds. Water was up in the clouds, now it's here on the ground. That's the discussion, is that nolad or not? Right? So, but here I have the same thing, it just, the name identity has changed. It's not really nolad because it's the very same item, but the same item has just changed into something else.
It's even twisting it and making it into something, because it's the same piece of...
It's the same piece. So it looks like you could think that Rabbi Kiva would say it is nolad, but that's the crux of the machlokas, right?
Yeah, no, but I think what he's saying maybe is that even though it's the same piece, halachically, once it becomes smaller than 3x3, it's not a baguette anymore.
Right.
In a sense,
correct.
Right?
But
it's still the same material.
What Rob is asking is the moment that I take the baguette and turn it into a wick, is it something else? Is it something else? Right.
So what would Rabbi Eliezer say if it weren't
Word of
Yom
Be fine. It should be fine 100%.
Be fine 100%.
According to this pshat,
Yeah.
according to what we've just said, according to the first pshat about hadlaka, it would be 100% A-OK.
Rabbi Eliezer has to go.
Because it's Erev Shabbos. You're lighting on Erev Shabbos. You go into Shabbos.
Right.
It's Shabbos. You're not lighting on Shabbos. All the issues we have with wicks until now has been about combustion, about volatility, whether it's wicks or oils, whether catching, burning brightly, burning consistently, flickering. Right? Because the moment I light it on Shabbos, I have to make sure the flame burns. And I'm not going to try to adjust it. This is an unusual kind of thing that looks like there's something integrally wrong with it. Right? There's something wrong. So you have to come up what's wrong here. What's wrong is an issue of muktzah on Yontif. When's it going to be? It can't be a muktzah on Shabbos because I light it before Shabbos. The burning wick is muktzah on Shabbos. So he has to give this unusual kind of thing. So it's a different kind. According to this interpretation, it's a very unique case. Correct. It's also unique in the fact that the reason relates to the act itself. There's something wrong with the act. Not that the act will set me up for a failure of a candle or a failure of a wick on Shabbos and it's not going to work, or I'll come to adjust it on Shabbos. The actual act has a problem in itself, which makes it different than everything we've had until now. That's why there may be a second answer. Okay, a simpler answer. You all must admit this is not the simplest answer. It requires X number of steps to. And the Gemara says, you have to assume that this is Rabbi Yehuda, Mesikim Mekalim, Mesikim Meshivrei Kalim. And you have to follow Ula that says Madlik Tzor Shadlik Barov Hayotze. You got to consume most of the thing, and so forth. And it's only going to take place on Shabbos, which is Erev Shabbos, which is Yontif. Yontif Shechal Yos Be'erev Shabbos. So you have to have all three of these premises in place, lined up, to make sure it works. Right. So the first question, before we give another answer, is is it really true that all three of these premises all line up?
Right.
In other words, you have to assume that it all works according to all the people that we've given it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So who gave this answer? The answer was given to us by No. Rav Elazar, Rav Oshai, v'chein Rav Ada bar Hava. Okay, just keep in mind these people, Rav Elazar, Rav Oshai, and Rav Ada bar Hava, presented to us the application of the Tuma and Tara answer to Shabbos. Okay? So the reason that's important is because the Gemara is going to ask now, Rav Yosef, and one footnote, Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Hainu de Tonena, this is what I learned in a brisa, which I didn't know what it meant. Gimel Gimel mitzumtzamos. There was a brisa that I heard a part of the brisa, I heard a cryptic part of a brisa, I didn't know what it meant, and it talked about something a beged that was 3 by 3, exactly 3 by 3, and I didn't know what it was talking about. Right, and I didn't know what it was referring to. It was obviously referring to this situation here that we're talking about, which lighting the wick of the Psila Sabeget Shekipla of Hava, which was exactly 3 by 3 that was being used for Shabbos, Hadlakas Neiros on Shabbos, which was Erev Shabbos, which was Yontif, and exactly 3 by 3.
3 by 3 tefachim or it's
It's both. No, I heard something about 3 by 3 it's both. I didn't know what it was, so therefore this is really what I'm talking about. So 3 by 3 it's both is the minimum amount of beged, which is fairly small. You understand that that usually can become a wick, right? 3 fingers by 3 fingers makes sense to make a wick, a fat wick. Okay, problem is we have to line up all these ducks to make this work. So the Gemara says, the commentaries Rav Ada bar Hava lead Rav Yehuda, and seeing that Rav Ada bar Hava was one of the guys who gave this answer, or it looks like actually Rav Elazar said name Rav Oshaya, and maybe said also name Rav Ada bar Hava, he may have been the originator of this. It looks like Rav Ada bar Hava follows Rabbi Yehuda in the opinion that was mentioned about Nolad, that Nolad is prohibited. Right? So if I can show you that Rav Ada bar Hava says the Nolad is permissible, we're in trouble.
Right.
Because the assumption was that it follows Rav Yehuda, who says Nolad is prohibited, and therefore you cannot be masik and bekalim v'lo b'shivrei kalim.
Right.
Okay? So the Gemara just throws out the question to try to disprove that, and we're going to give a simple answer in a moment. So with the commentaries of Rav Ada bar Hava, libid Rav Yehuda, Shema Minok Rav Yehuda Svirle, that shows that he follows Rav Yehuda, that Nolad is also. So is that true? Says the Gemara, Miyam Rav Ada bar Hava, the Rav Ada bar Hava say this, from Rav Ada bar Hava, from an Aleph, Nachmi Shechaka Kav Bevakat Yisrael. So if I have on Yontif, a guy took a piece of wood and cut out a piece of wood from this larger piece of wood. So I have a big piece of wood, let's say like a log, and I can't use this log because it's not usable for the fire. It's just humongous. And a guy came along and carved out a piece of a kav's worth of wood for me, which is perfect for me to throw into the fire on Yontif. And he carved it out on Yontif. So B'bikat Yisrael, in a piece of my wood, Yisrael Masika B'Yom Tov. So a Jew can light this on Yontif itself. And the Gemara says, V'mai, V'nolad hu. This looks like it's brand new, it didn't exist. I didn't have in mind to use this kind of wood. This wood is like a big stump of a tree. So this was never in my mind to use this for firewood. So the fact that the guy created on Yontif, for me, is a type of Nolad. That's the argument. Now you can argue back and forth. There may be differences. One is here it's a guy. The other case was a Jew. Maybe I did have in mind for the wood, but it looked from the back and forth. The Gemara's discussion. The Gemara assumes that it's really nolad. So if that's the case, that it's nolad, and who makes the statement? Ravada bar Ahava. The Ravada bar Ahava looks like he says that nolad on Yontif is permissible. Nolad on Yontif is permissible. Maybe not Shabbos, he would say it's Asr, but on Yontif he would say it's permissible. Then how can Ravada bar Ahava give you the answer that he just gave, which until now, which assumes that you have to follow Rabbi Yehuda on Yontif, that you can masikim b'kelim, follow b'shiver kelim, because Nolad is Asr. Okay? Boom. Okay? So the Gemara says, standard answer, L'divrayim de Rav Eliezer Rav Akiva kamalei v'leila sfirlei. Nah, you know what? Ravada bar Ahava really does not believe in Nolan and Yontif, but he was giving away for Rav Eliezer and Rav Akiva to explain their machloket. So it would not be his machloket of choice, but at least this is one way that he can separate between Rav Eliezer and Rav Akiva. It's a very strange kind of answer, okay? But that's how the Gemara resolves it, at least. In other words, he says, V'leila sfirlei. So when Ravada bar Ahava is following Rabbi Yehuda, that he says the machlokas, it's really not according to what he doesn't really follow it. He's going to follow the halacha, in his halacha, or his opinion, Rabbi Shimon, but the machlokas, Rav Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, is going to follow Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? It's not necessarily a bad way to say that. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon are Tanaim, Rav Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva are Tanaim, so Rav Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva are going to follow Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and Ravada bar Ahava, is going to follow Rabbi Shimon's opinion. Okay? So anyways, that's the first answer. Second answer for Shabbos. We don't have a second answer yet for Tumah and Tahar, I told you. Rav Omar, second answer about Shabbos. Haina time with the Rabbi Eliezer. This is a different reason why Rabbi Eliezer says it's asr. You can't madlik, right? And this is what your wife will tell you that you have to singe the wick from. You can't use light with a wick that's not singed yet. Mechorach means burnt. And you can't use rags, so to speak, for wicks that were not singed. Okay, so that's the reason for Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Akiva is going to have a reason. He's going to say that's not. I don't really agree with that. So therefore, that says nothing to do with Erev Shabbos. That's Erev Shabbos is Yontif. It's any Shabbos. The machlokas is about, can I use a wick that's not singed or not? And that's the case he's actually talking about. Basila sabeget shekipla v'lo hava. So the key to the second answer of Rava really is not about kipla. Right, the first answer really was focusing on the word kipla, folding it up, right, folding and twisting it over. The second answer really is about loiv hava. He didn't really singe it. He didn't really expose it to the fire. Okay, and this actually makes a lot of sense. This is, and it's really not that much of an argument about it, because all the other cases of wicks that we didn't use and oils that we didn't use were concerns that they wouldn't maintain the fire. So if it wasn't singed, the concern was, as you go to light your candles and you're about to make Shabbos, and Shabbos is about to come in, the wick is not going to catch, or it's not going to catch completely because the garment is still soft, it's not really prepared properly, it's too loose, it's coming apart, it doesn't catch the fire. That's the same all the other reasons we had with wicks and oils. So that's the simplest answer, and that's the second answer of the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't bring Rabbi Akiva because that's just the obvious, what would be the reverse of what Rabbi Eliezer is. So it's the issue is the wick is not really singed. So Gemara says, Elahad Tani Rav Yosef, Gimel al Gimel with some sources-mekorot. So when Rav Yosef said he heard some kind of brisa that talked about 3x3 etzbos, and he didn't know what it was talking about, that seems to be talking about Shabbos. This is not a Shabbos problem. The last answer helped us understand what Rav Yosef was wondering about. Everybody knows 3x3 etzbos. So what's the question here? Lamai helchasa. So he says, it was about Tumah. So Lamai helchasa, Linyan Tumah, Detan, Gimel, and here's what it is. Gimel Shamru, Chutz min Amelo div Rabbi Shimon, V'chachamim amim Gimel Mechuvanos. When it says 3x3 etzbos is equal to the minimal amount of a garment, is that 3x3 plus a hem, or 3x3 without the hem? In other words, this is 3x3. Do I have to have a hem? Because every garment automatically has a hem on the edge. So 3x3 plus the hem, which would make it 3.3. Maybe I guess they probably hemmed on all sides. So it's really 3.1 by 3.1. Or does it mean 3.3? So this was a discussion between who? Between Rav Shimon and the Chachamim. And this is what Rav Yosef heard, that said Gimel al Gimel meant the smallest amount of a garment is 3 by 3 without a hem. So even if it's not hemmed, a piece of cloth that's 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos, and there's no hem on it, it's still considered a beged. So you
According to Rabbi Shimon.
I mean, think of a kippah, like think of these small postage size, postage stamp kippahs that the people wear, right? The small ones. That's like 3 by 3 etzbos. But usually, if it's going to be a felt kippah, it's going to have some kind of hem around it, right? Maybe even knitted, it might be like a thicker kind of knitting around it. Not sure. So that's the machlokas, is 3 by 3 plus a hem, or 3 by 3 without a hem, because all garments, of course, do have a hem to make sure that they don't get ragged on the edges. That's what he did, that's what he couldn't understand, and that's what he's referring to. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, now, so this is all the first. What do we have so far? We have the first answer for Tumah and Tahara, which is about about Tomei and Tar. We have 2 answers to explain the issue about Shabbos. The first one related to the Tumah and Tahara answer. The second answer was really completely independent. We do not have yet the second answer for Tumah and Tahara. Okay. So now the Gemara is going to discuss for a moment about the case about Masikim B'Kalim and Masikim B'Shivrei Kalim. So far it's fairly simple. This is also simple. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav Masikim B'Kalim V'Ein Masikim B'Shivrei Kalim Div Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon Matir. Okay, so we said the first answer suggested that the machloket really revolved around this machloket. Do you say that you can't use Shivrei Kalim on Yontif, but you can light with full utensils or full begadim, but I can't use broken pieces of utensils or broken pieces of begadim which broke on Shabbos, which ripped and came apart on Yontif, Rabbi Yehuda says I can't, and Rabbi Shimon says matir. Rabbi Shimon follows the lines, by the way, in most cases, where Rabbi Shimon is more makil for issues of muktzah than Rabbi Yehuda throughout all of Shas. So that's one example. Example 1 of machlokas Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. Example 2, something changes on Yontif. Masikim b'tmarim. Tmarim is dates. You can use dates to light the fire. I have dates. Dates probably have a lot of sugar, and sugar will burn well. Okay, right?
As a wick or as a sub? Or
as a fuel.
As a fuel.
I can throw dates into the furnace, into the oven. I'm assuming they burn. I've never tried
They're
it.
organic. So
They're organic. They should. It would. Okay. So and dates were fairly plentiful. So I can use it on Yontif. I can use dates to throw into the fire for cooked things or warm things. So achalon, if I ate the dates, in masikim begarinehem, I can't take the pits that are inside and use them, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to become fuel. That's very similar to kalim and Shivrei Kalim. Same way that I can use Kalim and I can't use a broken piece of Kali, so I can use a date, but I can't use a broken piece of the date or the leftovers, which is just simply the leftover pit, which has no food on it. It's not edible. Because it's nolad. Because when I had the date on Erev Shabbos, on Erev Yontif, I planned to use it to eat. I plan to use it, and if I want to use it to eat, I can use it for anything I want. I can use it for fuel. That's also tzorach nefesh, tzorach yontif. But the pit itself was really meant to be garbage, and the pit itself was not separated. So I never intended to use the pit because the pit was like a shivrei kalim. Now it's not exactly the same. Do you admit?
I thought of using the pit you're saying before, it would have been okay.
Right. The difference is, what's the difference between the first case and the second case? Kalim and shivrei kalim versus tmarim and garinim. What's the difference between the two of them? Well, the difference is a utensil or a garment was not meant to be ripped. The ripping happened accidentally, or it happened on purpose. Either I have a garment, or I have a ripped garment. I have pieces of a garment. With a date, I have a date and a pit, except that they're together. The pit itself is just not accessible until I eat the date. So when the dates existed on Erev Shabbos or Erev Yontif, the pit was not accessible to my use. It only becomes accessible when I finish eating the date and I have the leftovers, right? And I want to use that as well, so that's like a nolad, because I couldn't get to it on Erev Yontif. So if I ate it before Yontif, I have pits I can use them on Yontif. But if I ate it on Yontif, the pit only becomes accessible to me on Yontif. That's a form of nolad, but it's not exactly the same. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay? And the Gemara is going to talk about that in a moment. So that's the second case. So where is it again? Masikim and Tvarim, Achlane Masikim Begarinem, give Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Matir. Third case. Masikim Be'agozim. Agozim are nuts, walnuts. And I can use walnuts to put them into the fire. Now in the case of the walnut, where is I'm going to eat the nut. I got to crack the nut, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So I eat the nut, and what am I going to do with the shell? The shell is also organic matter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, no, I guess.
It's organic matter. Waste not, want not. The Chazal were very careful about recycling. So once again, I can use, if I had full agozim, full complete nuts, which I intended to eat, but I can use them for anything that serves my yontif purpose. I can throw them in my fire and warm up or cook things. Achlon, if I ate the nut on yontif, and masikim b'klipos sam, I can't use the remainder shell to light the fire. Div Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Matir, Rabbi Shimon's Matir. Three cases, and each case is a little bit different. The Gemara is going to explain them, and you'll see you've already figured out the first and the second one. Utzricha, diashmin and kamais. If I had the first case, which is about the kli and the shiver kalim, Ba'hi kam Rabbi Yehuda mishum d'meikara kli v'ashta shiver kli. In the first case, first it's a utensil, now it's broken. You can't have them both at the same time. It's one or the other. So it broke. V'havi le'nolad, and that's really nolad v'yaser. But maybe I would have thought of a tmarim d'meikara garinim v'hashta garinim ema shaber dami. But the second case, they were pits initially, and then now they're pits. Nothing changed about the pit. All that changed was my accessibility to get to it. So I may have thought that Rabbi Yehuda would allow it. Kamash malad. Rabbi Yehuda says no, it's still nolad or it's still muksa. V'yashmin and garin, and if I had the first two cases and the second case including the dates and the pits, I would have said hava mina d'meikara mechasyan v'hashta meglayin. In the case of the dates, I couldn't get to it; it was covered. The pits were covered, and now only on Yontif do they become revealed and accessible to me. Of a klipe agozim, but the shell of the nuts of the walnut d'meikara migla v'hashta migla, they were visible to me at the beginning of Yontif. And they were available. Same as shaper dam. I would say that maybe Rabbi Yehuda would say that I could use them. Sricha comes along to tell me a third case not. Why not? Because when a shell, even though a shell was visible to me, it was not meant to go into the fire. I didn't really intend to use it alone. I only intended to get to the fruit itself. So the fact that I ate the fruit showed that I really did not intend to use the shell. So therefore the shell only becomes an accessory usability after I take the fruit out of it, after I take the walnut out of it. So even in the third case, Rabbi Yehuda says I can't use it. It's still considered muksa because it's separated from what it was. It's a separate, unique item now. So therefore, three cases. Okay? So these are three cases about Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, which really has nothing to do particularly with what we've learned until now in the Mishnah. Just dealing with Shivrei Kalim and Kalim. And one final point about this. You want to know something? The case about the Tmarim, which was told to us by Rabbi Yehuda Rav, really Rav didn't really actually say that. It was understood that Rav would be following this kind of this trend. Why? Because of the following case. For Hada Rav La B'Ferishitmer, he really didn't say this like Rabbi Yehuda. Ela Mechlolitmer, it was derived from the event that happened. Which is the case? The Rav Achli Tzmari, V'Shadei Kushaysa L'Buchaya. So Rav was eating Tmarim, and he took the kashayas, the pits, the garinim, it's a different Aramaic word, and he put them into the buchaya. Buchaya was some kind of furnace of some sort. And this is, by the way, not on Yontif, this was a weekday. He's eating his tamarim, and you know what, opposed to throwing it into the waste basket, what did he do with it? He recycled it, threw it into the fire. So Amalei Rabbi Chia, so Rabbi Chia, who is sitting next to Rav, or opposite Rav, when he did this, said to him, Bar Pachte, son of Gedolim, Kenegdo b'yom tov asur. If you would do this on Yontif, it would have been prohibited. What you just did now on the weekday, that you took the leftover garinim and you threw it into the fire, had this been on Yontif, you would have done Naveir on Yontif. So the Gemara, that's the case that happened.
Rav didn't answer. We don't know.
We don't know what Rav answered, correct. So A, the case was not actually about Yontif. B, was Rav Chia talked to Rav. We don't know what Rav responded. So we're assuming that Rav must have accepted, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So Gemara says, Kibli minei or lo kibli minei. Did Rav accept it or not accept it? Did Rav really believe it would be prohibited like Rav Yehuda on Yontif or not? There's nothing wrong with what we did on a weekday. Right. Question, what about the applicability to Yontif? So the Gemara says, Toshma, we'll bring you another case about Rav that had the following situation happened. The Chiyas of Rav LeBavel, when Rav came to Bavel, Rav was Meretz Yisrael, Shmuel was in Bavel. Rav came to Bavel, and all the arguments of Rav and Shmuel usually take place in Bavel.
When he moved to Bavel.
He moved to Bavel, correct. So he comes to Bavel, right. When Rav comes to Bavel, in other words, I guess one of the first things that happened, or when he came to Bavel, they recorded this following story. Ochal Tamre, he ate smarim, he ate dates, Veshada Kashai, so these are the Garinim again, L'chiyuta. Chiyuta is the chayos. So he gave the leftover pits to the chayos, to the animals. Okay, there were whatever animals were running around there. Once again, now the pit, it sounds like something terrible to eat. But apparently these kinds of animals could digest these kinds of items. Probably goats, strong body, stomach enzymes, whatever it was. They eat everything. So this is the case that Rav did, and this looks like it was on Yontif. Okay, so he did this. He was eating. He didn't throw it into the fire, but he did something is bad. He gave it to the goats. Okay, now you can only feed the animals on Yontif. There are things that are permissible to you can't.
No, they're normal food.
Normal food. You can't take nola. You can't take muktzah and feed it to animals. So the Gemara says, well, so you have to understand there were two types of dates. Okay, there were Persian dates, and the Persian dates when you ate the date, there was nothing left on the pit. The meat and the pits completely separated, and there was nothing left remaining on the pit. So the pit was just pit. And then they had Aramean dates, and the Aramean dates, when you ate the pit, when you ate the date fruit, there still was some of the meat of the date fruit on the pit. So if there's fruit still on the pit, what is he feeding to the goats? He's feeding food to the goats. Nothing wrong with that. Just happens to be there's a pit attached to it as well. So the Gemara says, well, my la befar yasaya v'lo kibla, is it not going to be the story that he was eating these Persian dates, and all that he fed to the animals in Yontif was the pit, and therefore you see that he felt there was no problem of muktzah feeding the animals just the pits on Yontif? So the Gemara says, no, lo bar miyasa. He was dealing with Aramean dates, however chazev agavimayu, and seeing that that there is, because of the originating part of it, there is still from the mother of the pit, which means the fruit of the date is still attached to it. So it's not that he's using really muktzah, he's using food, that there's some of just the pits that are suddenly attached to it as well. Okay? So therefore we don't know what Rav really would have said. Okay, because he did not use muktzah at all.
Right.
But at any rate, it looks like Rabbi Yehuda and Rav made these three statements, or at least they derived them, what he would have said, whether he would have said them or not said, but at least these are three cases, Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel, that argue, and then all three cases, they definitely seem to have an argument. Question where Rav fits into all of the three of these cases. Okay, finally, the final piece about Masik and Mekalim v'lo b'shivrei kelim. Just last place, okay. Amalei Rav Shmuel Bar Chana Rav Yosef Rav Yosef. This is a Talmudic kind of question. Rabbi Yehuda di Amar Masikin b'kelim v'Masikin b'shivrei kelim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you can burn garments, but you can't burn broken parts of garments. So what did Rabbi Yehuda say? So Kevon diadlik b'purta havalei shivrei kelim. So what's the case here? Is this the case of our case here? What did Rabbi Yehuda say about shivrei? Right. Oh, so Rabbi Yehuda says you can light with kalim, but you can't light with shivrei kalim. And what was the case according to Rabbi Yehuda? The case according to Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah was you had actually only 3 by 3 expose of garment, and when you lit the flame and it was folded over, you now turned it into shivrei kalim. So the question is, isn't this really going to be a problem with any time that you use a wick? Let's say I have a wick, and the wick is 4 by 4, 5 by 5. So the moment that I light it, as it begins to burn down, aren't I now lighting with something that's shivrei kalim? Now, isn't every keli going to become a shivrei kalim at some point? Aren't I really going to be using nolad? So I may not be touching the olad, but I'm going to be using the olad. So came on the idlik. So Rabbi Yehuda the Amar Masikim b'kelim ve'im Masikim b'shivrei kelim came on the adlik b'purta havalu shivrei kelim v'chi kamahapech b'isur kamahapech. So if I put in, I burn the, let's say on Yantif, I put in something that's a real kli, and it starts to burn. And then it becomes now a broken part of a kli. It's no longer what it was. And as I turn the fire over, aren't I now turning over and moving what's really nolad? So even if I start with a real kli, automatically I have a real garment. I throw a full shmata into the fire. Eventually it's going to get down to the point where there's no longer shmata, it's going to be too small. Or it's going to burn into two different pieces. Isn't it now going to become shivrei kelim? And when I turn the fire over on Yantif and twist it around to keep the fire going, aren't I now using nolad? So isn't this going to be a problem with any fire that I use? Any type of kli? Whether it's a wooden kli, a broken wooden kli, or whether it's a garment, a broken beged, or a full beged, or a full wooden piece of wooden kli, eventually it's going to become shivrei kelim. And I keep adjusting the fire on Yantif to make sure the fire is going to be there. So isn't this going to become a problem? Yes? You're about to say something?
Well, I mean, I would have thought that it's bottled to the fire.
Well, correct. Bottled to what part of the fire? Bottled to the other wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be the Gemara's answer.
Okay.
The Gemara's answer is going to be that, yes, you're right. If I started with a real kli and I've got things and the fire is burning now, and there's wood in the fire and everything else, so it becomes part of the fire itself. As I turn it over, I'm not just turning that over, I'm turning over other items as well. So the Talmudic question that looked like, Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to have a problem with every kind of fire on Yantiv is not really a problem. And the Gemara says as follows. Here we go. Let's read again. Kevan kamahapech kevan kamahapech v'chi kamahapech bisur kamahapech. So Gemara answers the Avad Rav Masna. The answer is you're really doing like Rav Masna said. Then Rav Masna Rav Eitzim shenoshim in adeka latanor b'yantav mar be'eitzim muchanim masikam. If I have wood that fell off of a date tree and it fell directly into the oven. Okay, so in other words, forget the date tree, any tree. I have branches that suddenly were attached on Erev Yantif, and suddenly a wind came along, and the branches got detached, and they fell directly into the tanur right below it. And I guess to use a date tree because things are pretty straight up and down on a date tree. So now, what's my fuel? My fuel suddenly became nolad. So how can I use this for fuel? So what's the Rav Masa say? You add more regular wood, and you light it. I'm lighting the regular wood, and I'm working with the regular wood. There just happens to be also nolad wood that got mixed in with it. But I'm not using solely nolad wood. So same thing here. If I have a kli and it burns down to becoming a shever kli, but it still is other things in the fire that are going on at the same time. That's what Rabbi Yehuda would have to say. Rabbi Yehuda would say, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, I couldn't only use a kli that gets down to a shever kli, I'd have to have other items as well in the fire, which probably would have at 9 out of 10 times.
So it's like havlah.
It's like havlah. Okay, it's like havlah, correct. It's like it's swallowed up. It's just part of the whole fire together. So that's a case of Rav Masna, which is going to be applied to our case here as well in terms of the case of Shivrei Kalim as well. So it's not a problem. So the only problem would be if you only start with Shivrei Kalim when you're lighting the wick, you turn the kli into Shivrei Kalim, and it's Erev Shabbos, that's Yontif, which is the first answer we gave for the myth about Shabbos. Okay, so far so good. Now we have the first answer for Tuma, 2 answers for Shabbos. Now we come to the second answer for Tuma. Okay, so this word starts Rav Hamnuna. It's very misleading because it doesn't tell you what the answer is going on. Rav Hamnuna Amar Mehacha. Rav Hamnuna says the case about Tuma is a very unique kind of case. Let me just give you a bit of a short introduction. If I have, what's the normal smallest amount of a garment that I can use? 3 by 3 etzbos. But sometimes there are garments and shmatas and rags that are even smaller that have a utilitarian purpose. Let's say I wanted to hold a very hot pot, and I didn't have gloves, or I didn't have, some kind of asbestos or so, whatever they used to be. So I had a small piece of shmata. That may be enough for me to hold the pot, to be able to pour a hot pot, or to pick up a hot pot. Even though it's really a tiny piece. But it insulates my finger from becoming burnt. So I can decide to use something smaller than 3 by 3 etzbos if I intend to use it for a specific purpose. Okay,
Before we said as a poor person could use it, but now we're saying a different thing altogether.
This is called mikuli matlonios. Matlonios are like rags. There's a kula for rags that I can remake them begeds, redefine them as a beged, even though they're smaller than 3 by 3 etzbos, if I use it for a purpose.
Gotcha.
Okay? Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Okay, now first I know small 3 by 3, not quite sure what kind of rag it would be, but whatever it was, I could use it to insulate my one finger at least. So the Gemara says, Rav Hamnuna Hachab, what we're dealing with here, Pachab Mishalosh Shlosha Askina, we're dealing with smaller, is it Shlosha by Shlosha? So Shlosha means actually 3 by 3 Tfachim. So actually we're dealing with 3 by 3, less than 3 by 3 Tfachim. We're dealing with smartutim less than 3 by 3 Tfachim, okay? Because if it's 3 by 3 Tfachim and it's the shmata, even if it looks like I'm going to throw it away, it's going to be considered still a shmata. Okay, so it's dealing here with 3 by 3 Tfachim, my mistake. Umikuli matloni oshano kan. V'yazan Rabbi Eliezer l'tamei, Rabbi Eliezer follows his opinion, Rabbi Akiva l'tamei, Rabbi Akiva follows his opinion. D'tznan, that we have a Mishnah Masechet Kelim. Pachos mishlosha shlosha, I have this shmata that's less than 3 by 3 Tfachim, so it's a little bigger than I thought it was. So that's already could be a good shmata. Shetkino, that I prepared it, l'fakak bo et amerchatz. I wanted to stuff up a pipe. I have this throwaway rag that really should go down the garbage, but I got a pipe in the bathhouse I need to stuff up. Okay, so what I do, I take a rag and I stuff it up. Okay, you can think of examples in your life where you do something like that. I wanted to pour a hot pot or hold on to a pot to give me some kind of grip. So I have a rag that really is worn out and I should go in the garbage can. Or I wanted to clean out the millstone. So I have once again a shmata that I want to clean out all the schmutz that's on the millstone. And I'm not going to use a good garment, use something that's a throwaway. So bein min amuchan, bein shnei shemin amuchan. Whether I prepared it or whether it was going to be thrown away, it's tamei. Div Rabbi Eliezer. This is Rabbi Eliezer says. It's considered that it's I can use it, and I do use it. Rabbi Yeshua says, and pay attention to Rabbi Yeshua, bein min amuchan, bein shalom min amuchan tahar. Whether it was prepared or not prepared, it's tahar, and it can't become tameh because this kind of thing is a throwaway garment. It's not a garment. It's a shmata. It's a rag. It's a throwaway rag. It's an ad hoc piece of leftover garment material. It's no longer a garment that I'm just using to wipe down my millstone, whether to stuff up the pipe that has a leak in it. Right? It's not really a garment. So Rabbi Eliezer says I can make it a garment. Rabbi Yoshua says I can't. Rabbi Akiva says men amuchan tameh v'shlom men amuchan tahar. Rabbi Akiva seems to have a middle position. If you prepared to use it as tameh, if you didn't prepare to use it as tahar. Now there's still a complication here. V'yomar Ula, and Ula said, V'tema Rabbi Bar Machan and Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol Moldim, everybody says, as follows: Zarku ba'ashba divrei kol tahar. If they actually threw this garment into the trash bin, into the ashba, which is really bad because the ashba was thrown out of the city. The ashba was where people went to the washroom. The ashba was really the dump. If I threw it in the dump, then what everybody would say that it's tar, it's no longer a garment. Even if I now want to reclaim it to go scrape down my millstone or to stuff up the pipe. Okay, why? Lost my place here. On the other hand, if I had this leftover shmat and I put it into my box, my closet, so even though it's a leftover shmata that's dirty and no use and I'm going to throw it away, but I put it aside, what does that mean? Everybody would say that's Talmud. I've now reconstituted that as a garment. Where's the machloket? Lo nechleku el shetlo b'magod o shinichu lachorei adelas. The machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua is whether I hung it on a peg or I put it behind the door. So in other words, it's not clear. It's like an ad hoc place that I'm going to throw it. It looks like it's halfway in the garbage. It's not fully in the garbage. I didn't put it aside in my pantry closet, and I didn't throw it away into the ashba. So Rabbi Eliezer savar min kazarku ba'ashba daiti lavei. If I put it, See, I didn't throw into the ashba. I really intended to use it. Umay karle shlomen amuchan. What does it mean, shlomen amuchan? Delgabe kufs alav amuchan. It's not really prepared because I didn't put it into the box. Rabbi Yeshua says, "Midlo hinicha b'kufso betuli batle." So if I didn't put it into the box and I simply hung it behind the door or on the peg, then it doesn't mean I really want to keep it. It's lomen amuchan. Umay kar why am I call it muchan? Delgabe ashba muchan. It's more muchan than ashba, but it's really not muchan. So this is machlokas Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Akiva betlo b'magot savar Rabbi Eliezer. Binicha choredel savar Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Akiva has this middle opinion. Rabbi Akiva says that when I hung it behind the door on the peg, it's like Rabbi Eliezer. It's considered prepared. And if I hang it behind the door, not on a peg, it's like Rabbi Yeshua, and it's considered not prepared. It's batel. Okay, so that's the machlokes. So so what are we dealing with here? So the case that we're dealing here with this rag. Let me just before I give you the final answer here. The case that we're dealing with in our Mishnah, which talks about Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Kiva, really seems to line up with Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Okay, about this kind of rag that looks like it could be a beged and looks like it could not be a beged. This has nothing to do with Shabbos. It has nothing to do with Shabbos whatsoever.
Tuma.
It's Tuma. The Shabbos reason is the second reason we gave, that it wasn't singed. But we're dealing here not with a regular tiny rag, which was the first answer about whether shever kli and not shever kli. It is going to be kli and therefore tamei, not tar. We're dealing with a much piece of larger object. But the question is, it's a piece of object that I looks like I want to keep it, but looks like I don't want to keep it. So therefore, in this kind of object, which is called mikuli matlanios, Rabbi Eliezer would say that it's tameah, because if I hung it behind my door on the peg, I still want to keep it.
Right.
So therefore, it's still considered I reconstitute it as a baguette, even though I didn't put it into my pantry.
It can become tamei.
Right, can become tamei. Rabbi Yeshua is going to say it's not tamei because I didn't put it in the pantry. I'm really just keeping it there on the way to the garbage can. So that's the case that we're talking about. Now, this is Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Akiva seems to be a middle opinion. However, and this will just get us down to finish this piece of Gemara, the Gemara says, V'hadar Rabbi Akiva legabe Rabbi Yeshua, that Rabbi Akiva changed his mind to be like Rabbi Yeshua. So what I just told you is the machlokas Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua is really Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. Now, why Rabbi Akiva changes his mind, or how we can prove it, I'll read to you, but it's not really clear from Rashi and Rishonim why it's so muchrach. So I'll just read it to you. So v'hadar by Rabbi Akiva legabe Rabbi Yeshua. Mimai, how do you know this for sure? So I'm a Rava. So Rava says, Midakatani psilas habeged. Our Mishnah says psilas habeged shekipla. It does not say my area the tani psilas habeged listen psilas shel beged. So Shmai Psilas HaBeged, the Adayin Beged, who is still considered a Beged, and therefore it's a partial Beged. So Rabbi Akiva looked like he was a middle opinion. So no, what Rabbi Akiva is now saying, because Rabbi Akiva argues in our Mishnah, is anything that looks like it could be a Beged, even if it's just hanging on the back of the door, or it's hanging on the peg, that's still considered a Beged, like Rabbi Yeshua would say, and therefore it would be considered, and therefore it would not be considered a Beged. And so Rabbi Akiva would say it's going to be Tahar, Rabbi Lezer would say it's Tameh, and Rabbi Akiva is really holding like Rabbi Yeshua. How to put it into the words? Rashi tries to give up shot. The Rishonim don't like it. It's not really clear, but the bottom of the day, the bottom of the bottom line is that the machlokas Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua is really Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Akiva about a strange case of kuli matlanios where it really looks like it should not be a beged. Is it or isn't it? That's the machlokas among the Tanoim. If you're not really putting in the ashba and you're not putting it in your pantry, but you're simply hanging it behind the door or hanging it a peg, what are you treating it as? Is that tamei or not tamei? That's the machlokas about tumah. And that brings us to the end of this piece of Gemara, which means I can go to Eretz Yisrael, and in 2 weeks or 2 weeks, 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, we can start the next Mishnah, which deals with a different topic. Okay, and we're getting very soon to a long piece of Agarah on Daf Lamed. Okay, so thank you very much.